Olá, boa tarde a todos e todas. Vamos iniciar mais uma atividade aqui no canal do GEOLANDS. Como sempre, né, eu vou fazer alguns informes, também vou apresentar os nossos convidados. E eu peço que quem ainda não está inscrito no canal, se inscreva no nosso canal e também siga a nossa página no Instagram. Dando sequência ao nosso projeto, né, com a série de lives, hoje teremos dois convidados muito especiais, que é o professor doutor Antônio José Teixeira Guerra e o professor PhD Michael Fullen. O professor Michael Fullen, ele é professor de Tecnologia do Solo, é PhD, graduação em Ciência do Solo, concedida com uma tese intitulada Uma investigação de precipitações com aumento e erosão em solos aráveis, Impósio, em Schopenstein. Também ele tem licenciatura em Ciência do Solo pela Universidade de Wolverhampton. Atualmente, ele colabora com alguns projetos de pesquisa, que incluem erosão e conservação do solo na província de Yunnan, na China, e conservação do solo na Lituânia também. Ele é vice-presidente da Sociedade Europeia para a Conservação do Solo, representante do Reino Unido também nessa sociedade, e é membro executivo. O professor Antônio José Teixeira Guerra possui graduação em Geografia pela Universidade Federal do Rio de Janeiro, mestre em Geografia pela Universidade Federal do Rio de Janeiro e doutorado pela Universidade de Londres. E tem pós-doutorado pela Universidade de Oxford e pela Universidade de Wolverhampton, na Inglaterra. Atualmente é professor titular do Departamento de Geografia da Universidade Federal do Rio de Janeiro. Tem experiência na área de geociências, com ênfase em geomorfologia, atuando principalmente nos seguintes temas: geomorfologia, erosão do solo, movimentos de massa, recuperação de áreas degradadas e gestão do solo. Infelizmente, o professor Kleber Carvalho não vai poder participar, e, como sempre, teremos a presença do professor doutor Jémison Mattos. Oi, professor.
Olá, pessoal, boa tarde. Agradeço a presença de todos, né? A gente vai convidar agora o professor Michael Fullen e o professor Guerra para aparecer na live. Eu vou fazer um agradecimento. Thanks, Professor Mike, for his presentation, for his participation. Thanks for Professor Guerra for his presentation, participation. Nice to meet you, Mike.
My pleasure. My pleasure.
We hand it over to you, Mike.
Okay. So you're going to put the slides on, yeah?
Você vai colocar os slides, Giovanni?
Sim.
Isso, Jordânia.
Ok.
Guerra. Ok. Se quiser fazer alguma saudação anterior, pode ficar à vontade. Você e Mike.
Okay. Sure.
Jémison is asking me to say a few words about you, Mike.
Okay. Yeah.
I'll say them in Portuguese and then translate into English. O professor Mike Fullen é um grande especialista em ciência do solo, como a Jordânia diz, professor da Universidade de Wolverhampton, já veio ao Brasil várias vezes, tem vários projetos em colaboração conosco aqui no Brasil e em outros países, e nós agradecemos muito a presença dele hoje aqui. I said that you are a top soil scientist, known all over the world, and you have come to Brazil several times.
Yes,
and now we have the pleasure to have you with us in this live. It's with you now, Mike.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Muito obrigado. So, hello everyone. Oi. It's a great pleasure to be here. And greetings, United Kingdom. We're actually 4 hours ahead. So with us, it's just gone past 6 p.m. So what I'd like to talk about is the importance of soil as a resource And so I hope at the end of this, you'll be persuaded, if you're not already, that it is a very important resource for humanity. So I'm calling this Soil, Sustainable Only If Loved, SOIL. That's my address. It's Wolverhampton, which is in the middle of England, to the northwest of the city of Birmingham. So it's right in the middle. Where I live, a place called Ironbridge, which Professor Antonio has been to, is west of there. And in fact, it's the county, the district in which Charles Darwin was born and lived. So we're not far from where Shakespeare came from. So we're in the middle.
Can I translate, Mike?
Yes.
Ele está dizendo que vai tentar nos persuadir hoje, né, da importância dos solos, né? E o título é bem interessante, né? Solo sustentável só se for amado, né? E que ele é da Universidade de Wolverhampton e mora bem perto da onde o Charles Darwin morou, né? Certamente o Charles Darwin não é uma pessoa muito benquista entre vários governantes brasileiros. É observação minha essa. E também não mora muito longe de onde Shakespeare morou, não.
Ok. Thank you, Mike.
Obrigado. De nada. So just a little quote there to put in context from Serbia, which is a small European country, translated into English. Be humble, for you are made of earth. Be noble, for you are made of stars.
Can I translate, Mike?
Yes, please.
Mais ou menos assim, seja humilde, porque você foi feito da terra, e seja nobre, porque você foi feito das estrelas. Um provérbio sérvio.
Sérvio. Ok.
Yes, Mike.
Okay, I think next slide, please.
Próximo.
Ok, né? Isso, Jordan.
And just a little bit more philosophy to put in context. A quote there from a Chinese writer, out of mud the lovely lotus blossoms, out of trials something higher vies. That means that in the dirty, unpleasant, thick mud, something beautiful comes, which is the lotus flower. And this is also a lesson for life, because we have difficulties, trials, but also out of these trials, we can become better and stronger.
I will translate, Mike. Esse é bem interessante, porque é de um filósofo chinês, né? Então, assim, da sujeira ou da lama, né? Podem, lótus, né? Flores de lótus podem nascer, né? E com várias tentativas podem chegar mais alto, né? Quer dizer, de onde parece que tem lama, sujeira, escuridão, pode nascer flores muito lindas como essa que está aí. Yes, Mike.
Okay. So next, please. So I've been interested in soils for a long time. I would say this is my first lesson in soil science when I was 3 years old with my grandfather, and he would take me into his very nice garden and explain how the soils and the crops behaved. And this is where I started my interest in soils when I was 3. And this is at his garden in the northeast of England.
Ele está falando que desde os 3 anos de idade, esse é o avô dele, que levou ele ele no colo do avô, quando ele tinha 3 anos de idade, e mostrou o jardim muito bonito que o avô dele tinha. Então ele começou a se interessar por solos desde essa idade. Yes, Mike.
Okay. So just to put where we are in context and to emphasize the relative smallness of the Earth, here we have a view of the planet Earth from Saturn. This was taken on the 19th of July 2013 by the Cassini spacecraft. That's one of NASA's spacecrafts, and that is showing the Earth at a distance of 220 million kilometers.
A Terra sendo mostrada a uma distância de 220 quilômetros de Saturno.
Just to show how small it is.
Como é que a gente é pequeno, né?
And so little arrows there pointing at Rio.
As setas estão apontando para o Rio de Janeiro.
So next, please.
Próximo.
Próximo, Jordânia.
Proximo, yeah. And that one, you can just about make it out. That's the view of the Earth and the Moon from Saturn. You can see the Earth on the left, the
Próximo.
larger blue dot, and the Moon on the right, the smaller dot. So
Eu não vou traduzir
shows
tudo, não, porque há
how
muita coisa para entender.
remote we are. And this is going further out. We can see it right in the middle at what's called a pale blue dot. And that's the image of Earth from 6 billion kilometers, just over 6
6
billion
bilhões de quilômetros.
kilometers, around about the orbit of Neptune. And that was taken by Voyager 1 on the 14th of February 1990.
Fui tirada essa imagem aí.
And it's so far away, it took 5.5 hours from the signal to reach Earth. So that's a picture of the Voyager satellite on the top left. And that pale blue dot in the middle is Earth. And what I'm basically saying is that's all we've got. We have to look after it.
Ele está dizendo que isso é tudo que nós temos e a gente tem que cuidar desse planeta Terra.
Ok.
Yes, Mike?
Okay.
Yep.
I'll read this out, but I don't expect Professor Antonio to need to translate all this. But you can see the point I'm trying to make is this is all we've got, and we have to look after it. And I'm leaving the PowerPoint with Professor Jémison and Professor Antonio, so you have more time to study it if you like, and also you've also got my email address, and you're very welcome to contact me. But this is from Carl Sagan, who he was astronomer, 1994. So I'll read it out, but don't worry, Antonio. Look again at that dot. That's here. That's home. That's us. On it, everyone you love, everyone you know, everyone you ever heard of, every human being who ever was, lived out their lives. The aggregate of our joy and suffering, thousands of confident religions, ideologies, and economic doctrines, every hunter and forager, every hero and coward, every creator and destroyer of civilization, every king and peasant, every young couple in love, every mother and father, hopeful child, inventor and explorer, every teacher of morals, every corrupt politician, every superstar, every supreme leader, every saint and sinner in the history of our species lived there on a mote of dust suspended in a sunbeam. The earth is a very small stage in a vast cosmic arena. Think of the rivers of blood spilled by those generals and emperors so that, in glory and triumph, they could become the momentary masters of a fraction of a dot. Think of the endless cruelties visited by the inhabitants of one corner of this pixel on the scarcely distinguishable inhabitants of some other corner, how frequent their misunderstandings, how eager they are to kill one another, how fervent their hatreds. Our posturings, our self-imagined self-importance, the delusion that we have some privileged position in the universe are challenged by this point of pale light. Our planet is a lonely speck in the vast enveloping cosmic dark. In our obscurity, in all this vastness, there is no hint that help will come from elsewhere to save us from ourselves. The Earth is the only world known so far to harbour life. There is nowhere else, at least in the near future, to which our species could migrate. Visit, yes, settle, not yet. Like it or not, for the moment, the Earth is where we make our stand. It has been said that astronomy is a humbling and character-building experience. There's perhaps no better demonstration of the folly of human conceits than this distant image of our world. This is the comment of Carl Sagan. To me, it underscores our responsibility to deal more kindly with one another and to preserve and cherish the pale blue dot, the only home you've ever known.
Can I make a quick summary, Mike?
Yeah, I would say summarize it. Don't need to do all of it.
Ele pegou essa frase do Carl Sagan, né? Vai estar disponível depois o PPT para todos vocês, mas mostrando que a gente tem que ser mais humilde, né? E que é o único local que a gente conhece para viver, pelo menos no momento, né? E que a gente tem que tratar melhor o planeta Terra. Mais ou menos isso, assim, em poucas palavras. Carry on, Mike, please.
Yes. So, of course, our whole planetary system is in one way or another powered by the sun. So our nearest star, and that's a NASA image of the sun on the 28th of August 2014. So the próxima.
Próxima, por favor.
Yeah. And the point making here is that though we're going to focus on the soil, we have to look at the different components of the planetary system in an integrated way. The atmosphere, the biosphere, lithosphere, the soil, the pedosphere. And this is sunrise from the International Space Station, taken on the 5th of May 2013. And the point is that not only are our soils very thin, but it is surprising how thin our atmosphere is as well. You can see that as the blue light at the base.
Can I translate, Mike?
Please,
Ele está dizendo que é importante esse é o nascer do Sol, né? Tirado do espaço em 5 de maio de 2013, né? A gente tem que levar em consideração que o ponto focal nosso hoje aqui são os solos, que dependem da hidrosfera, da atmosfera, da biosfera, né? E os solos são muito finos, né? Mas esses vêm essa camada azul, que é a atmosfera, que é muito fina também. Carry on, please.
Yeah, yes. So in the next slide, we can again just see this thinness of the atmosphere. So that's another issue where we have to try to protect our environment. We can see on the left the crescent moon, again from the International Space Station.
A frente esquerda, e a atmosfera muito fina que a gente tem que proteger. Yes.
On the 1st of February 2014, and we can see the thinness of the atmosphere. It's divided into structures. We can see the lower part, that thin red band, is our main part of the atmosphere, where we have our weather, known as the troposphere, above which we have the stratosphere, mesosphere, and thermosphere. But we can see it is very thin and therefore very precious.
Muito fina e consequentemente, muito preciosa.
So the issue, if we consider our planetary system, really we give it the wrong name. 71% of the surface of our planet is covered by water. However, we name our planet after one of its vital resources, that is Earth. So along with air and water, soil is essential for life on Earth.
Ele está dizendo que 71% é coberto de água, mas a gente chama o planeta Terra, né? Mas que ambos são vitais para a gente, tanto a Terra como a água, né?
So, but in terms of this limited land area, only 29% of the surface of the Earth, only about 11% of the world's land is suitable for the growth of crops. That's the United Nations estimate. So that's just over 13 million hectares. The rest is too cold, wet, dry, or steep for arable crops. And on that 11%, we need the soils for the growth of crops, for grazing of animals, and timber. So about 90% of the world's food supply is based on soil systems. And in the background, we have a global demand for high quality food and food security. And this is occurring at a time of unprecedented rate of global climatic change.
I'll translate that, Mike. Está dizendo que 11% da superfície da Terra, né, que é disponível, né, para lavouras, são 13 milhões de hectares. O resto é muito frio, muito úmido, muito seco, muito íngreme para lavouras. E a gente precisa dos solos para crescer lavouras, né, cultivar lavouras, criar animais e madeira também. E 90% do suprimento de alimentos do mundo vem desses sistemas de solos. E há uma demanda global para produtos de maior qualidade, alimentos, e para segurança de alimentos. E a gente tem um precedente mudanças climáticas globais. Carry on, please.
Thank you. And the real big problem is that the world population is getting so big. It's growing at over 1.1% per year. That's about 73 million people a year, or over 10,000 people per hour. So it's estimated that the world population passed about 7 billion people, 7,000 million, on the 31st of October 2011. And there is a very informative world population clock. And that's the website. And I checked it just before we started at 12:30 your time today. And that was the estimated population, 7,804,900. Yes, it's 7.8 billion. Yeah, a lot of people. And I recommend you have a look at that population clock, that website, when you have some time, because it's very informative. A lot of information there tells us about the demographic dynamics of the world population.
O Mike falou que em 31 de outubro de 2011 a população do mundo era 7 bilhões de habitantes, né? O crescimento é muito rápido, e ele tem esse clock, né, da World Meters, né? E atualmente, né, ele viu um pouquinho antes da nossa palestra que já era 7 bilhões, 804 milhões, etc. Agora, 14 de agosto de 2020. Next, please. Próximo.
So to emphasize now, focusing on the soil system and its role in sustainability, some quotations to summarize this importance. The first is by Lucius Columella, who was one of the earliest known European writers on agriculture, lived in the Roman province of Iberia, which of course now is Spain. And he wrote in 60 AD, "The soil is a common mother of all things, because she has always brought forth all things, and is destined to bring them forth continuously." So really emphasizing the central importance of soil for our sustaining life. And also an ancient Chinese quote, "Once the skin is gone, where can the hair grow?" So if you lose your scalp, you can't grow any more hair. So if you lose soil, you can't grow the crops.
Então, frase interessante que ele está colocando aí, né? Vou traduzir só a última ali, que é um provérbio chinês, né? Uma vez que você perca a pele, né, que seria o solo, né, você não pode mais crescer cabelo. Você não pode mais crescer nada no solo, né? Next, please, Mike.
Yeah. So this is to emphasize that the Earth is a series of interacting spheres. We got the core, the soil, the surface of the Earth, and the atmosphere. And the surface of the Earth on the land is occupied by soil, but this is a very thin, tiny component of it.
As várias partes aí da Terra e o solo representando uma camada muito fina.
So there's a lot we don't know about the soil, and the statement of certainly one of the world's greatest scientists, Leonardo da Vinci, is true. We know more about the movement of the celestial bodies than about the soil underfoot.
Está falando que o Leonardo da Vinci, né, colocou naquele período que ele viveu que a gente conhece muito mais sobre os corpos celestiais do que sobre o solo que está embaixo dos nossos pés.
And there's a quote there from Lester R. Brown, who's the director of the World Watch Institute in Washington, D.C. in the USA, emphasizing the importance of soil erosion. And we don't really see it as an important issue because it's what Brown described as a quiet crisis, not widely perceived. We know about earthquakes, volcanic eruptions, other disasters occurring, but this human-made disaster is unfolding gradually, and we're not really noticing it.
Ele colocou essa frase do Lester Brown, diretor do Woodward Institute de Washington, né? Colocando justamente isso, né? A gente só percebe terremotos, né? Erupções vulcânicas, etc., mas a destruição gradativa do solo a gente não percebe. Próximo, next.
Yeah. So if we look at some soil erosion forms, we can categorize these. One is splash erosion, where the falling raindrops translate, move their kinetic energy onto the soil surface. That forms what's known as an impact crater, where, as it were, the water droplet punches the soil, and you get a little crater, and then a shell rebounds around it, known as a rebound corona or rebound crown. This was photographed in the laboratory because very quickly this was shot at a 2,000th of a second. Though it's not very dramatic during individual rainstorms, the net effect of splash erosion can be quite severe.
É interessante que o Mike falou, né? Esse é o efeito corona, né? Do impacto da gota de chuva, do splash, né? Embora não seja muito dramático, mas assim, quando você acumula tudo isso, o efeito passa a ser bastante prejudicial aos solos. Next, please.
So another example of splash erosion, and you can see how over time it can be very effective. We have a stone there which has protected the soil surface. It's a very fine, silty soil which is easy to erode. We call it erodable. And because of the protection of the stone, the rock, the soil has been carved away, on either side, not protected by the rock, leaving this upstanding area, which we call a pedestal, protected by the rock. So we can see how much splash erosion there's been. There's a penknife for scale, and this is on the Tabernas Badlands. These are desert-like lands in the southeast of Spain.
Ele está dizendo que isso aí mostrando, né, como o efeito splash, né, dá aquele grãozinho de quartzo ali, né, dá uma proteção, tira o material todo que está baixo, né, isso aí na Espanha, né, região degradada na Espanha, e ele colocou aquele canivete ali vermelho como escala, né. Próximo.
This is going close to home. In
Yes.
fact, it is Professor Antonio's home in Ubatuba, just outside his garden. This is sand, and you can see after a rainstorm, just little tiny stones can protect the soil surface, lead to the formation of pedestals. And again, we've got scale there, sunglasses, to put it in scale. So splash erosion on sandy soils at Ubatuba in Sao Paulo State.
A foto que ele tirou aqui em casa, quando ele veio aqui com uma chuva, na realidade era um depósito de areia que tinha sobrado de uma obra, e ele colocou o óculos dele ali para servir como escala para mostrar o efeito splash ali. Próximo, Jordânia, por favor.
Then we introduce splash erosion. We also have runoff erosion, where water flowing over the surface erodes, transports, and eventually deposits sediments. This is one of quite a number of examples I'll show from China. This is runoff erosion during intense rainstorm during the wet summer monsoon period in Yunnan province, which is in the southwest of China. It borders Vietnam, Myanmar, Burma. And you can see this is runoff from a maize field during the thunderstorm, causing a tremendous amount of erosion.
Ele está dizendo que isso aí foi tirado na China, né? E mostrando justamente que tem o splash erosion, tem o escoamento superficial, tem bastante, né, uma tremenda quantidade de erosão que dá para ver ali, né? E eventualmente o material acaba se depositando. Próxima.
Yep. And it's the same place, We were fortunate just to witness it on the way to a field site. And that looks like a little stream. But what it is, in fact, is a farmer's footpath. In this system here, the agriculture is not very mechanized. And so there's very dense sort of patchwork, networks of footpaths the farmers move about on. The soil gets compacted, and therefore, when there's runoff, when there's a storm, runoff takes place very quickly. So my training was very much traditional from the European, North American perspective, and I believe that all runoff came from the soil, arable soil itself, but found, studying this in Southeast Asia, that the footpaths are very important. And for only perhaps 15 minutes, the footpath actually acted as a stream.
Mike está falando que o treinamento que ele sempre teve, né, a erosão viria mais nos campos de milho e outras lavouras. Só que aí, com 15 minutos de chuva, seria uma trilha, né, na fazenda, né, onde o fazendeiro produz milho, por exemplo, e em 15 minutos já forma isso, parece quase que um riachinho correndo aí, né? E aí é sedimento da própria trilha, devido ao impacto, devido à compactação que a passagem dos fazendeiros fazem. Próximo, por favor.
And there we can see that where what looks like a stream, in fact, is runoff down the footpath, which only lasted for about 15 minutes, going onto the road. And we can see the deposition of sediment on the road, some of which is very coarse, which of course indicates that there's a very high energy associated with this particular erosion event.
Está dizendo que a quantidade de material que vem acaba se depositando ali, material muito grosseiro ali na estrada, né? E continua depois da estrada, e esse material muito grosseiro é uma evidência da energia que essa água que está escoando tem.
I'm not sure if Professor Antonio will translate this exactly, but both Professor Antonio and Professora Carmen are world-recognized experts on erosion on footpaths, trails.
Carmen Antonio, yes.
I thought you wouldn't translate it exactly. Then we get into severe soil erosion. We've got splash erosion, incision in shallow channels, which we call rill erosion. And then when it goes deeper, we call it gully erosion. And this is still staying in Yunnan, which in a place called Yemo County.
I will translate. Olha aí, minha gente, não sou eu que estou falando, não. O Mike está falando isso aí também, né? Para quem acha que a erosão por vossoroca só ocorre por escoamento subsuperficial, ele acabou de falar isso aí, né? Que aí o escoamento superficial deu origem a ravinas e a continuação do aprofundamento das ravinas, o aprofundamento e o alargamento dessas ravinas deu origem a uma severa erosão em Yunnan, na China, transformando em vossorocas. Próximo, por favor.
I know Professor Antonio in a previous seminar talked about what is the difference between a rill, a shallow channel and a gully. Some debate about it, but clearly where they get very deep into the subsoil and down to the rock, they're usually termed gullies. And this is the same place where the gully erosion is extremely severe. A place called Julin, which is Chinese, which translates as the soil forest. And there we can see severe gully erosion for both natural, geological, and human-induced reasons.
Ele está falando que ele sabe que num seminário anterior, que foi que eu apresentei semana passada, né, eu botei bem a explicação entre ravinas e vossorocas, e vem me batendo bastante por isso, e essas aí são vossorocas severas, né, bem intensas na China, né, que eventualmente pode atingir o subsolo e chegar até o afloramento rochoso. Próximo, por favor.
And on that slide, if you just hold that slide, can we go back just to make a point?
Jordan.
We can see the recent human impact. We see in the background, that gullied area there is actually an arable field. That's where they're growing watermelons, which in many countries, cultivation on slopes such as that would not be permitted. So even today, active erosion is taking place.
Só traduzindo rapidamente, foi bom que eu tinha esquecido de traduzir. Ele falou que é erosão geológica e erosão induzida pelo homem. E que lá no final nessa foto aí, tem plantio ali, que ele sabe que em muitos países não seria permitido devido à alta declividade. Jémison, quer falar alguma coisa?
Não, é isso. Tranquilo, pode seguir, Guerra. Tá ótimo. Congratulations.
Próximo, por favor. And there we can see the linkage between gully erosion and deposition of sediment in river basins. This is on the northern border of Yunnan province, looking across the Yangtze River. The next province was Sichuan, famous for its hot food. And there we can see very severe gully erosion, which is largely taken place due to removal of trees. These are on the foothills of the Himalayas.
Está falando que está no sopé dos Himalaias, né? E aí mostrando a conexão nítida entre a erosão por vossoroca, bem severa, e o que acontece nas bacias hidrográficas, com a sedimentação nas bacias. E essa região é conhecida pela sua comida bem apimentada.
So if we now go, yeah, please. Yeah.
Próximo, por favor.
Yeah, approximately, yeah. Down into the valley, we have Yunnan province on the left, which is south, Sichuan province on the right, which is north, and we can see the very large amount of sediment being transported by the water due to soil erosion. And we can tell something about the sources, because the sediment on the right is from sandstone, so it has a light sandy colour, and the sediment on the left is from mudstone and shale and slate, and therefore has a grey colour. And this area of the Yangtze is particularly of importance because further downstream, further downriver, we have the Three Gorges Dam, Sanxiar, which is the world's largest engineering project. And therefore sedimentation into the reservoir will decrease the lifespan of the dam and the reservoir. So soil conservation here is very important.
Caramba, deixa eu ver se eu lembro tudo que ele falou. Ele está mostrando, né? Que aí mostra esse slide, mostra bem a deposição, né, nos rios trazida pelas vossorocas, né? Do lado direito é mais claro, resultante de arenitos, do lado esquerdo é mais escuro, é resultante de argilitos, e esse material acaba indo em direção às represas, a maior represa do mundo, que acaba sendo bastante assoreada. Próximo, por favor.
This is still staying in China, but going further north. This is the Yellow River, and you can see in a province called Ningxia in the north near Mongolia. And here we can see it is actually yellow. In Chinese, it's Huanghe, Yellow River, and it is yellow because it's full of so much sediment. It's estimated that the Yellow River transports about 1,800 million tons of sediment to the Yellow Sea each year.
Essa aí do Rio Amarelo, né? Estimado, dá para ver que é amarelo mesmo pela cor, né? Que transporta, se eu peguei bem a tradução, 18 milhões de toneladas de sedimentos.
Próxima, please.
Jordânia, próxima.
Okay. And then we should mention wind erosion. This is an important site in terms of the winds. Important symbol, it's the Temple of the Winds in Athens, which of course is the capital of Greece. And at this temple, the Greeks worship the ancient Greek god Aeolus. And hence, when we talk about wind erosion, we often use the term Aeolian erosion or Aeolian processes, named after Aeolus.
É interessante isso que ele colocou. É um templo na Grécia, né? E que quem trabalha com processos eólicos, né? É um deus, né? que era eolian, né? Que seria o nosso eólico, eólio. E aí, então, quem trabalha com esse processo, essa palavra eolian, veio desse deus grego aí, Aeolian. Próximo, por favor.
Yep. An example again of wind erosion processes and how it relates to the important global problem of desertification, the expansion of desert-like conditions. This is one of the 12 deserts of China, the Tenga Desert. That's the Yellow River flowing there. And to the north is the Tenga Desert, which is taken, the Tenga is a Mongolian word, which means land from the sky.
Ele está dizendo justamente a importância de trabalhar com erosão eólica, né? E aí a China tem 12 desertos, esse é um deles, e esses sedimentos acabam chegando aí no Rio Amarelo. Next.
And you can see just in the middle of the Yellow River there's a little island.
Tem uma
This is
pequena...
taken on a nice July day, in the middle of the day. So we go to the next, please, and we'll see the island again.
Próximo, Jordânia.
And there we can see it 3 days later, again, middle of the day, a huge dust storm coming out of the Tenga Desert. Only lasted about 20 minutes. And though that's a photograph, it was a very sort of violent environment with winds blasting out of the desert, only for about 15-20 minutes. And then it stopped, went back to being a nice July day. So a vast amount of sediment being transported in the process of wind erosion, which closely relates to desertification.
Está falando que essa tempestade de areia durou uns 15 ou 20 minutos apenas, mas está bastante relacionada à desertificação. Próximo.
And there's, of course, satellites help us a lot in these studies. And there's a view of a dust cloud crossing the Red Sea. On the west, left is Egypt. On the right is Saudi Arabia, which is east. And we can see this dust cloud going across the Red Sea from the Sahara Desert.
Ele está falando que as imagens de satélite ajudam bastante. Aí uma tempestade de areia na esquerda é o Egito, né? E o Mar Vermelho aí, e a tempestade de areia atravessando em direção à Arábia. Próximo.
Another example, this is going back to China, where there's also the problem of the dust from the deserts, commonly known as the Gobi Desert, combining with air pollution by human activities and traffic. So we can see this pollution. This is the 14th of January 2013, and where Beijing is under the dust cloud.
Ele está falando também a combinação aí de poeira, né, e poluição, né, em Pequim, né, e tem a data aí dessa imagem de satélite.
I've shown this slide in China, and the people get a little bit upset because the situation is much better now. We've got pollution control laws, so it's not as bad now.
Ele está dizendo que ele mostrou esse slide na China, as pessoas ficaram um pouco chateadas e disseram que a situação não está tão ruim agora.
But some parts of the world are true desert, and there's not really a lot we can do about it. It's the way the global climatic machine operates. Some areas of the world are very naturally dry. Here's these lands we call hyper-arid. Here's an example of the Sinai Desert. On the left, which is south, is Egypt. There we can see the border, the military road on the Egyptian side, the border, and we're stood in Israel. And you can see there's no water there. The amount of rain that falls is about 3 millimeters a year. So that's just be a light shower, maybe once a year. And it mightn't rain for 20 years. So in terms of desertification, there's not really a lot we can do about such hyper-arid areas.
Ele está falando que não tem muito o que fazer sobre essas áreas que ele está chamando de hiperárida. Aí é na fronteira entre o Egito e Israel, e costuma chover 3 milímetros por ano, e às vezes pode passar 20 anos sem chover nada. Isso aí é a própria desertificação, né? Próximo, por favor.
Another example going into China again, hyper-arid lands of the Taklamakan Desert, that's in the far northwest of China, where it's only about 5 millimeters rain a year. And Taklamakan is a local Turkic language, which means that land, once you get in, you can't get out. Because it's a big desert.
É grande deserto. Essa palavra significa assim, uma vez que você entra, você não consegue sair. E chove aproximadamente 5 milímetros por ano. Próximo, por favor.
This is going into the more slightly wetter areas, which we'd call semi-arid. There's much more rainfall going further east in China, in province Ningxia. And there's more rain. And it's in these areas where it's possible that human activity can contribute to reclaiming the desert. The problem here is overgrazing by sheep, and that's removing the vegetation, and you get these small bare patches. And then when the winds come, which are usually in springtime, which there is about March, we get a lot of wind erosion. So here, by controlling grazing, there's something we can do.
Ele está falando que aí já é área semiárida na China, mais para leste, né? E é um pouco mais úmida, mas o problema aqui é que tem um super pastoreio de carneiros, e aí não sobra quase vegetação nenhuma. E aí, quando, nessa época da primavera, né, em março, como ele falou, problemas de erosão eólica podem ser bem severos aí.
And another important area in terms of desertification issues, this is Tabernas, which we had a look at before. This is near the city of Almeria in southeast Spain. And in fact, this is the hottest, driest part of Europe. It is technically south of some parts of Africa. It's a little bit to the south of Tunis, even though it's in Europe. So it's hot, it's dry, and there's a lot of concern in Europe about the desert-like climate of desert climate of the Sahara moving north into the Mediterranean Sea and bringing arid conditions to southern Europe. So a lot of research here in Almeria in terms of desertification processes and potential techniques for desert reclamation.
I've been there before, Mike.
You've been there, yeah.
Ele disse essa área em Almeria, né? Disse para ele que eu já estive lá. É a área mais seca e mais quente de toda a Europa. E eles têm muita pesquisa aí sendo desenvolvida aí. E eles têm uma preocupação que o Saara estivesse subindo um pouco em direção a essa região aí, tornando essa região mais árida ainda.
You might know that. Just a minute. That this is where they filmed Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom, or some of it. Yeah, because they were pretending that was a desert in Egypt during the war, the Second World War. So it's used a lot for filming, because we call them spaghetti westerns, because they're filmed in Spain as opposed to America. If they're filmed in the USA, somebody hurts their toe, the lawyers will appear and want lots and lots of money. There in Spain, they just go, no problemo, and so therefore a lot of filming is done here.
Tem bastante filme aí, eles chamam de western spaghetti, e eles filmam muitos filmes americanos aí, porque se alguém machucar o dedinho lá no filme nos Estados Unidos, os advogados vão em cima e aí não acontece nada, entendeu? Então eles preferem filmar aí. Next, please. Próximo, por favor.
And this is another important area of desertification in West Africa. This is taken a small country, the Gambia, on the West African coast. To the north, we have the true Sahara Desert, hyper-arid. Then it goes to arid, then subhumid, and humid lands in the south. And this is the transition zone known as the Sahel. The Sahel is the Arabic word for border. So it's the zone going from the semi-arid to the subhumid, and this is a main area of concern of desertification. A lot of researchers trying to stabilize the desert to reclaim the land and prevent further desert spread.
É bem interessante que ele falou que seria em Gâmbia, né, na oeste africano, e aí seria o limite entre o hiperárido do Saara e o Sahel, um pouco mais ao sul. E aí a preocupação com esse estudo que vem sendo desenvolvido na África e por países europeus e países africanos é que a desertificação poderia estar avançando em direção a essa área aí. Próximo, por favor.
Related to desertification, we have salinization, where the water evaporates and leaves behind a residue of salt, which we call salinization, which is also a very important land degradation issue. This particular example is from the Dead Sea of Israel, and as you can see, the lake bed has dried up, very rich in salt. The little circle in the middle is, in fact, an abandoned ship. That's a ship that's just, as the lake's dried up, it's just got stuck. So salinization is also an important issue, especially in semi-arid to arid environments.
Outro problema que ele está falando que está muito relacionado à desertificação é a salinização, né? Então, aí no Mar Morto, né, em Israel, né, e ele mostrou ali aquele círculozinho que tem à direita, é um barco abandonado ali. Próximo, por favor.
And this is the similar sort of situation. This was a lake in the late glacial times, about 12,000 years ago, and it's dried out. This is in Ningxia province again, a place called Yanxia. And we can see in the middle, there's the salt pan, which has been left behind.
Isso aí mostra um período glacial de uns 20 mil anos atrás na China, e novamente aquele esbranquiçado ali um pouco para a direita seria então concentração de sal que foi deixado para trás. Próximo.
So if we go up to the salt pan next,
o próximo.
Have a look. There we're looking in detail at the salt pan, where we see the actual salt crystals, and this is described in soil science, in pedology, by a Russian word, solonchak.
Ele está falando que isso aí é salinização, a concentração de cristais de sal, e em pedologia, na palavra russa que a gente conhece bem aqui, que é o solonchak. Próximo.
A factor we need to consider as well, increasingly, in land management and land degradation issues, is urban expansion. This affects soil quantity and soil quality. So in terms of soil quantity, we have the process of urban sealing, where of course we build over land, then that soil is no longer available as a resource. And it's estimated that perhaps somewhere between 280 and 300 kilometers squared of land is covered by urban sealing per day. In maps, soil maps, which of course are very important tools to analyze land management, these usually are shown as grey zones, and only recently have they received a lot of attention.
Mike está falando que a pressão também, né, da expansão urbana, né, nos efeitos sobre a quantidade de solo, né, ele chamou sealing, né, como um selamento, uma selagem, né, processo de selagem urbana. Por dia, estima-se que sejam de 280 a 300 quilômetros quadrados que são selados, né, pela urbanização, e a gente conhece bem que nos mapas de solo é aquela zona acinzentada. Próximo.
Just to illustrate, this is a small island, Isle of Man, which is between England and Wales on the east and Ireland on the west. It's only 30 kilometres long by 15 kilometres wide. Professor Antonio's been there with me on a field trip. I can see the small urban areas are demarked as grey because that's how urban soils are represented. And in fact, the capital, a very small town, capital on the left, which is the east, is Douglas. We see is grey and some other smaller urban areas as well. These are different land use types. An important issue is in the south east, the yellow soils. They're the most fertile soils. They're sort of deep glacial soils rich in calcium. And the very few very fertile soils are, in fact, much of it's been covered by the airport. The grey area there is the airport, Douglas Airport. And that is quite common. A lot of places, because of course airports are built next to cities on relatively flat land, a lot of soils are beneath airports are very fertile.
Ele está dizendo, isso é bem engraçado. Essa é a Ilha do Man, né? Eu já estive lá num trabalho de campo com ele, né? E essa área cinza toda são justamente solos que estão em áreas urbanas, né? Mas assim, os solos mais férteis são aqueles amarelinhos que aparecem mais acima, e são os mais férteis onde está o aeroporto de Douglas, o aeroporto que existe lá. E ele falou que isso é muito comum, porque os aeroportos geralmente pegam áreas mais planas para serem construídos, e é onde você tem solos mais férteis também.
For instance, the main airport in the UK, the biggest, is London Heathrow, and that's under some very fertile soils.
Ele está dizendo também que o principal aeroporto da Inglaterra, que é Heathrow, também por baixo do aeroporto tem solos muito férteis ali.
Imagina.
And there we can get a computer-enhanced representation of the urban population. The more light, the greater the population, and we can see that, in fact, a very large part of Europe is under urban areas, and therefore effectively sealed and can't be used for agriculture.
Ele está dizendo justamente essa luz toda, né, nessa imagem de satélite, quanto mais luz tiver, mais urbanizado, e realmente não sobra muito solo para ser utilizado, né? Tal a urbanização que existe na Europa. Próximo.
And looking at one particular part of Europe, that's the Iberian Peninsula, Spain and Portugal, from the International Space Station on the 26th of July 2014. And as you can see, we can see that a lot of Iberia is covered by urban areas, especially Portugal. And of course, Portugal and Brazil have very strong historical links. You can see particularly the denser, more heavily populated outline of Portugal, with Lisbon in the south west.
Ele está dizendo que a Península Ibérica, né, dá para perceber bastante iluminação aí, especialmente Portugal, com quem a gente tem muitas ligações, né? E aí mostrando Lisboa, por exemplo, né, com bastante iluminação ali, mostrando o grau de urbanização que Portugal tem. Eu acho que tem mais de 11 milhões de habitantes num país mais ou menos pequeno, né? Próximo, por favor.
But we also need to consider not only soil quantity, but also soil quality. So urban industrial soil use does affect soil quality. So we have contamination by pollution, toxic heavy metals, and hydrocarbons. Hydrocarbons are mainly derived from oil. The toxic heavy metals, there's a variety, but the main ones are arsenic, symbol AS, cadmium, copper, lead, nickel, and zinc.
Esse eu não vou traduzir muito não, porque ele está falando justamente da questão da poluição dos solos e os metais pesados, tóxicos, que ele colocou aí, que são praticamente iguais em português. Próximo.
We can see these sort of problems. This is the municipal waste site in Banjul, which is the capital of Gambia, a little country in West Africa. It's the edge of the urban area, and it really is a very unpleasant environment. Pollution of the soil, pollution of the air, a lot of smoke, things burning, and of course when it rains, the pollutants wash to depth and cause pollution of groundwater, which eventually, of course, people drink. So it's a big issue.
Ele está falando que isso é um problema sério, por exemplo, em Gâmbia, os lixões também, né? A gente também tem no Brasil, né? E quando ocorre a chuva, né? Esses poluentes são lavados, vão para o subsolo e as pessoas bebem essa água do subsolo. Próximo.
So there's very much a focus in Europe on trying to reuse old urban industrial land. That is, we call it brownfield land rather than greenfield land. Of course, Europe is relatively small with about 40 countries in it. So it's a bit squashed together, a bit compact. So we can't waste land. And then a lot of the old industrial land, brownfield land, is being reused, often for agriculture. And that's the policy of most European governments now, to try to focus development on brownfield land and conserve the greenfield land.
Ele está dizendo justamente esses terrenos marrons aí, né, resultante da industrialização, né, e estão tentando transformar em terrenos verdes aí, né? Essa seria a política atual da maioria dos países europeus, dos governos europeus. Próximo.
So that's a summary. That's the soil problems. We've had a brief introduction to the soil erosion by wind and water, desertification, salinization, chemical pollution, loss of soil organic matter and soil organic carbon, which we just touched upon, and urban sealing.
Então, problemas dos solos, que eu não vou traduzir porque está tudo praticamente igual ao português, o que ele vem falando até agora: erosão de solos, desertificação, salinização, perda de matéria orgânica e a selagem dos solos urbanos. Próximo.
So we shouldn't be too negative. We can see that there are problems, but there are things that we can do about it. So there are different soil conservation techniques, which would take a long time to go through them all, but just some of them. This is a major area of soil conservation, very famous, called Yuanyang in Yunnan province in China. And these are very old terraces, possibly as old as 1300 years.
Ele está dizendo que a gente não devia ser tão negativo, né? Porque aí mostra um exemplo de conservação de solos na China que talvez tenha mais de 300 anos. Próximo.
So this is the terraces in winter. So they grow rice in summer, which of course is from about May to October, the Northern Hemisphere. And then it's water without crop in the winter, but they have fish and frogs and ducks which live here. So it's a very well-sustained environment on what is quite poor quality soil, but still very productive.
Ele está falando que isso é bem produtivo. Esses terraços estão no inverno, no verão eles plantam uma série de lavouras, no inverno tem água em que eles criam peixes, rã, pato e etc. Então é altamente sustentável. Próximo.
So in winter it's particularly attractive because you have the reflecting pools of the terraces, the ponds, and especially dawn and dusk, many people go, especially photographers, to take the light.
Was this photograph taken by you, Mike?
No, not this one. No, I stole it from somewhere. I think from the web.
E essa área fica muito bonita, né? Especialmente no inverno, né? Por causa das cores que são irradiadas, refletidas aí, e fotógrafos profissionais vão aí para tirar fotos nessa época. Eu perguntei se essa foi tirada por eles, disse que não. Próximo.
So these are the rice terraces of Yuanyang in Yunnan province. It's believed they were constructed, or the construction began about 1300 years ago by an ethnic group called the Hani, which are believed to be originally from Tibet, though 1300 years is not very certain because they didn't really have a written history. But one of the Ming emperors gave the Hani the title of the Magic Mountain Sculptors as applause for, as he put it, building their ladders to heaven. So part of an international group trying to understand the Hani secrets of sustainability, how they managed to maintain and conserve this system for perhaps as long as 1300 years, and what lessons do they have for us as a modern society in terms of understanding the issues of sustainability.
Ele está falando desses terraços daí, né? Foram construídos há 1.300 anos atrás pelas pessoas, os povos de Hani. Desculpe que alguns minutos atrás eu traduzi 300 anos, mas é 1.300 anos, né? E esse imperador Ming, né? Ele deu esse prêmio, título Hani, que ele chamou de as esculturas das montanhas mágicas, porque elas foram construídas escadas para levar ao paraíso. E isso tem bastante lições para nos ensinar. Próximo.
But also we can do things about the desert. This is going back into Ningxia province in China, Sapato, which is a research station where we spent a lot of time. That's the Taklamakan Desert, where I showed you the dust storms earlier. What happened was the dust storms kept burying the train line going across North China from Lanzhou to Beijing. And so this research station, Sapato, has investigated different techniques of desert reclamation. It's a fantastic sort of field laboratory. And this is one technique, straw checkerboards, where rice and wheat straw was planted in squares. And then plants are like dry conditions, xerophytes planted in the squares. And this was very effective, is very effective in terms of stabilizing the desert.
Então, esses exemplos que ele está dando aí de recuperação de áreas desérticas, né, com plantio de arroz aí, com essa técnica, né, nessa província na China, e que é bastante efetivo. Próximo.
Another just example of desert reclamation, or the many examples we could look at. This is from an old soil, a buried soil, known as a paleosol, which is a remnant from a wetter time with more vegetation. And then the soil was overgrazed, became a bit drier, and there were dust storms, which has buried the paleosol under sand. And now people are digging up the old buried soil and mixing it with the topsoil and adding water. And within 2 to 3 years, they get a very good crop of vegetables. So it is possible to reclaim deserts, but it is very difficult.
Ele está falando que é uma forma, isso aí são paleossolos, né? Nessa área aí, em áreas desérticas, e eles estão pegando esse solo mais profundo aí, que seriam de melhores qualidades, que foram recobertos pela areia, estão cavando, estão misturando com o solo de cima e estão começando a plantar nessas áreas aí. É uma forma de recuperar essas áreas desertificadas. Próximo.
So try to bring these points together. So soil conservation is very important. It is, or was very much perceived as a problem of environmental engineering, which very much it is. But now we have to recognize there are many complex dimensions to soil conservation, complex mix of agronomic issues, economic, political and social considerations.
Ele está falando que a conservação de solos não é só um problema de engenharia ambiental, né? É uma mistura, né? Um complexo de mistura de agronômica, econômica, política e considerações sociais também. Próximo.
For soil conservation to be effective, we need a dialogue, conversation between local people and soil conservationists. This is essential. And I've studied agricultural systems in a number of countries, and it's clear that farmers do need to gain sufficient and sustainable incomes from their activities to be able to look after the land. They have to be able to support themselves and their families. So in some fairly old conservation systems, farmers were kind of pushed out by the government, but now there's increasing recognition that there has to be local support, involvement, and participatory agreement of local people, and farmers especially are crucial.
Ele está falando que tem que haver um diálogo, né, entre as pessoas, as comunidades locais, as pessoas que trabalham com conservadores, com conservação de solos, é essencial isso, e os fazendeiros devem ter também renda suficiente, né, para poder se tornar sustentável. Então, o apoio local, o envolvimento e a participação e o acordo, né, entre governos, pessoas que trabalham em conservação de solos e os fazendeiros locais é crucial para que a coisa dê certo. Próximo.
So it's really the final point I'd like to make is to focus on the importance of education. Let's say education is the golden egg. We need to educate people about the importance of the soil resource.
Ele está falando que a educação é como se fosse a nossa expressão, a galinha dos ovos de ouro, né? Então a gente tem que educar as pessoas, né? Próximo.
So education at all levels is essential. We need to teach about the soil. So what we're doing today is very important, and it's very important that young researchers involved in this activity disseminate this information. So it needs to be the general public, school students, college students, that includes graduate students, postgraduate students, and researchers. So the young scientists like you, and old scientists like Antonio and I.
A educação tem que ser assim em todos os níveis, é essencial, público em geral, alunos de escola, estudantes de universidade, graduandos e pós-graduandos, pesquisadores, e pessoas como você, Jémison, e quem está assistindo, eu e o Mike também, cientistas, né? Próximo, Mike.
Yeah. So, example, we need to educate young children about the importance of soil. This is the project we had in which Professor Antonio was the lead in Brazil. People were throwing litter about, and we said, no, it's not litter, it's a resource. And they make the thrown away plastic bottles, Coca-Cola bottles, into little bookmarks. And here the children of São Luís are giving the bookmarks as a gift to the children of the European Union. And we took them back and gave them to children here as a free gift.
Ele está dizendo que isso aí foi crianças em São Luís, né? Ali é o Mike e a Claire, her name, isn't it?
Claire, yes, yeah.
Participou do projeto Boraços, né? E aí crianças de São Luís falando isso aqui não é lixo, eram garrafas de Coca-Cola que eles fizeram marcadores de livro e deram para o Mike, para a Claire, para outros ingleses para levar para crianças europeias, e eles fizeram isso aí. Próximo.
Similar sort of education program. This is in Iceland. So young Icelanders planting trees in the northeast of Iceland, where of course it is cold. So getting land stabilization there is difficult, but the Icelandic people and their government are very proactive in conservation work.
Situação semelhante na Islândia, né? Muito frio, e eles são bastante proativos também em conservação dos solos. As crianças brincando ali. Próximo.
And this is one which and Professor Antonio recognized. This is a project we had called the Hanover Project in Wolverhampton, and both Professor Antonio and Professor Carmen came and helped in this during a 6-month visit a couple of years ago. And in the project, they're teaching school children about soil and crop systems. So you can see the black T-shirt with the back to us, Professor Antonio, and on the left, Professor Carmen.
Fico emocionado com isso aí, porque ele está falando justamente de um projeto que eles têm lá, que aliás eu vou falar um pouco também rapidamente, em agricultura urbana, com crianças de escolas públicas aí, na faixa de 10, 11 anos de idade, ensinando as crianças sobre os solos, e aí estou eu ali de costas, camisa cinza, né, a Carmen, não é, com a roupa mais escura, e as escolas toda terça-feira, 1h da tarde, ficava até as 3 horas da tarde, aprendendo com a gente, plantando naquela área. Próximo.
This is where we were involved in a project to disseminate soil conservation techniques to farmers, and of course they're critical in effective soil conservation, and to an agricultural college. So you can see both farmers and college students in this. We collaborated with the Land Care group. Land Care was a movement started in Australia, where they have Land Care International, Australian Land Care International, ALI for short, and here were students in a local agricultural college called Calva, and local farmers talking about soil conservation techniques.
Aí é um grupo, né? Ele com outro grupo do Land Care da Austrália, que seria cuidado com a terra, né? ensinando pessoas na Jamaica técnicas conservacionistas de utilizar o solo. Próximo.
So this is being involved with the farmers and looking at stabilization techniques in cropping systems. So an important mission of Landcare is to develop what they call land literacy. It's more focused on people in general, farmers and people interested in agricultural issues, to try and understand the land. Land literacy, like try and read it a bit like a book. And since its inception in Australia in 1984, it's now active in 26. Landcare is active in 26 countries.
Ele está falando que ele é como se estivesse ensinando as pessoas a ler o solo, né? E esse projeto Landcare foi criado em 1984 na Austrália. Eles participam atualmente em vários países, né? E é justamente para tornar as pessoas alfabetizadas do solo, saberem ler o solo. Próximo.
The students come up with some very imaginative ideas on how they can use systems to grow crops. So I think very interesting.
Os estudantes vieram com as ideias mais diferentes possíveis, usando esses objetos aí para poder plantar alguma coisa. Próximo.
And of course, teaching students, it's important. Undergraduate, graduate, these are Master of Science students at Yunnan Agricultural University, which Professor Antonio has also visited. And usually I go each year, usually about November, December, and do a short course on soil conservation.
Então, são estudantes aí de mestrado na China, né? Que eu já tive lá também. O Mike vai todo ano lá, né? E sempre trabalhando em parceria com eles. Próximo.
So, a point again in kind of summary, effective soil conservation is a team effort. It needs government at all levels to cooperate, national, international, in fact, as well. Provincial, municipal and local government, farmers, scientists, extension workers, they're the scientists that work particularly with farmers, and agricultural advisors must all cooperate and work together.
Ele está dizendo que tem que ser uma conservação efetiva do solo, tem que ser um esforço de um time, né? Governos em todos os níveis, a princípio ele falou nacional, depois ele falou internacional também, nacional, provincial, municipal e local, fazendeiros, cientistas, trabalhadores, extensionistas, consultores agrícolas, né, de agricultura, devem trabalhar e cooperar em conjunto. Próximo.
So, I guess you have the same in Brazil, that there's a pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. Yeah?
Está falando que ele acha que também tem o mesmo no Brasil, tem um pote de ouro no fim lá do rainbow, do arco-íris, né? Por isso que ele botou, vamos trabalhar.
So, I think we need to discuss whether the pot of gold of effective soil conservation lies in international cooperation, discussion, collaboration and agreement. I think we all need to work together to promote effective soil conservation.
Ele está dizendo que a gente tem que todos trabalhar em conjunto para promover realmente uma conservação efetiva do solo. Próximo.
So we have choices to make. We can go one way into more impoverished land, or we can go into more green land in better way. But I think for that to work, as in the top right, we've got to work together to achieve these aims. And this is part of our collaboration between our two countries.
Falando que a gente tem duas opções, mas a melhor seria a que a gente tem a terra verde ali, o céu azul lá, trabalhar em colaboração, e isso que a gente vem fazendo entre os nossos dois países, no caso, a Inglaterra e o Brasil.
This has been recognized now at an international level, the importance of studies of soil systems. The United Nations declared 2015 the International Year of Soils, and this is the symbol associated with that.
Esse é o ano 2015, foi o Ano Internacional de Solos, né? O logotipo foi criado para isso, né? Pela FAO. Próximo.
And then on the completion of that, the United Nations declared the decade of soils 2015 to 2024. So we're still in this.
So, a gente está nesse nível aí, que no final desse ano 2015, né, a Nações Unidas declarou a década dos solos de 2015 a 2024. Então, a gente está vivendo ainda isso.
The United Nations it was advocated or suggested by the King of Thailand that the United Nations adopt a World Soils Day. So the UN General Assembly adopted 5th of December as World Soils Day, which was the birthday of the King of Thailand. And the first World Soils Day was on the 5th of December 2013. And as mentioned, 2015 became the UN Soils Year. And there's estimated to be something like 60,000 soil scientists across the world. And it's estimated that something like that sort of population did celebrate World Soils Day 2014, and it repeats each year.
Então, o rei da Tailândia sugeriu, né, que fosse declarado um dia internacional dos solos, que seria 5 de dezembro, que é o aniversário dele, né? E atualmente, como eu disse ali, são estimados 60 mil cientistas de solo pelo mundo todo, né? E aí o Dia Internacional dos Solos em 2014. Próximo.
So this is the late King of Thailand, King Bumipol Adulyadej, also known as Rama IX, the ninth king of the Shakri dynasty. He was born 5th of December 1927. So hence the World Soils Day, and he became King of Thailand on the 9th of June 1946, but he died 13th October 2016. And his son's now the king.
Então, esse é o rei da Tailândia, né, que nasceu lá em 5 de dezembro de 1927, que foi declarado, então, o Dia Internacional dos Solos, né, e ele se tornou o rei da Tailândia em 9 de junho de 1946 e morreu em 13 de outubro de 2016. E aí o filho dele se tornou o rei. Próximo.
So, I think to suggest for the 5th of December 2020, it hasn't been a great year all round, but have a celebration of World Soils Day. And Professor Antonio will buy you all a beer.
Diz que não tem sido um grande ano, 2020, né? Então, como conclusão, a gente coloca as lições aí de Xiaohi, Xiangjiang província e o noroeste da China.
Just conclusions. This is an abandoned city called Xiaohe. It's the far northwest province of China called Xinjiang, northwest China. Próximo. Yeah. And this shows the city, and I think Xiaohe does capture a lot of the important issues about land degradation and stabilization and the complexity of it. This was the greatest city of northwest China, occupied by the Han Chinese people. Then there were problems of aridification. It became drier, the water became less, it was overused, it became salinized, societies came under threat, there were internal conflicts within society, the external conflicts, particularly invasions of Mongolians from the north, and eventually the civilization collapsed. So I think it's a nice, well, not nice example or a small scale representation of what's happening. We have climate change, overpopulation, internal conflicts within societies, international conflicts, desertification, salinization, soil erosion. Very complex mix with very complex causes and complex solutions.
Essa é difícil de traduzir isso tudo, mas é o que eu entendi, espero que vocês tenham entendido também, quer dizer, é uma imagem meio essa fotografia de uma área que colapsou totalmente, né? É uma área que houve uma exploração muito grande da água, da terra, e as sociedades começaram a colapsar aí, houve invasões pela Mongólia também, então acabou se destruindo tudo, e essa fotografia ele coloca uma representação de degradação total, né? E conflitos que aconteceram, né? Guerras, etc., e hoje em dia tem essa foto aí. Próximo.
So just to give a little bit of my perspective is I do really enjoy this, and I'm sure both Professor Jémison and Professor Antonio understand this. Taking words from an Indian philosopher, Deepak Chopra, what is more thrilling than the prospect of truths you do not yet know?
O que é mais thrilling, né? É das verdades, né? De perspectivas, né? Que você não conhece ainda, né? Next one, Mike.
And to take a quote from William Shakespeare, which again emphasizes the pleasure of being involved in this. And he says in the book, play Antony Cleopatra, in nature's infinite book of secrecy, a little I can read. You can only read a little bit, but there's great pleasure in being able to read even that little bit.
Ele falou uma frase aí do William Shakespeare, né, na infinita natureza, né, no livro, né, de segredos aí, né, um pouco do que eu posso ler, mas isso aí já é suficiente, né.
Muito pouco.
So another bit of advice is in education, we do need to look at things very carefully. We get a lot of information coming at us, especially from the web. And I think as it's very important in education that we evaluate information critically and not automatically accept all information. So we need to be critical analysts of our environment.
Ele falou que a gente tem que ser bem crítico e não aceitar tudo que recebe, né? Não aceite automaticamente, né, toda a informação. Você tem que ser crítico e não aceitar tudo que vem da web, né?
Próxima. And of course, very important that we go out in the field, do field studies, though I recommend that if you do this, that you don't stroke crocodiles.
Say it again, please, Mike.
Very important that we do field work. A lot of work now, of course, is geographical analysis done on computers, which is important, but we must not neglect field work. But I would say, suggesting that if you go and do field work, don't stroke crocodiles.
A gente precisa continuar fazendo trabalho de campo, né? Mas não tente lutar contra os crocodilos. Tem um ali, ó.
That's a real crocodile.
É um crocodilo de verdade ali.
Sure.
So I'd just like to finish by saying obrigado pela sua atenção.
Excellent accent, Mike. Carioca accent.
Thank you.
Many thanks.
Carioca de Norte.
Muito obrigado, Mike.
Michael,
My pleasure.
I want to thank for Professor Michael for presentation, excellent presentation.
Please enjoy it. I'm sorry I've gone on a bit long, but of course, with the language issue, it's a bit more complex. And thank you to your invitation, Professor Antonio, for his hard work in translation. Professor Antonio did the hard work.
Thank you.
Eu fiz trabalho mais difícil para fazer a tradução.
And thanks the Professor Guerra for translation. His translation, excellent translation. Congratulations, Guerra.
Posso passar imediatamente a minha apresentação curta?
É isso aí.
Mike, I'm going to make a short presentation, and because you are having in the last few weeks or few months an overdose of land degradation, my presentation is completely different from everything one would expect, including you. Estou falando porque a gente tem tido uma overdose de degradação de solos. A minha apresentação vai ser totalmente diferente de tudo que vocês poderiam imaginar, inclusive ele, tá? Então, vou colocar aqui.
E o Mike?
Já entrou aí ou não?
Não, Guerra.
Ainda não.
Como é que eu coloco aqui? Share screen, não é?
Share screen. Depois, Guerra, você clica lá no centro, onde na sua tela já vai aparecer compartilhar PowerPoint lá e você clica em cima.
Screen sharing, aqui, 2 monitores, não?
Pode ser tela cheia. Tem um no canto.
Tá. Cheguei lá.
Ok.
Chegou lá?
Isso. Agora, Guerra, clica no...
That's my surprise.
Ok.
Oh, muito obrigado.
I mean, you can see that there are Carmen's fingers, Carmen's ideas here. Professor Dr. Mike Fullen, that's our homage to you, okay? Essa é a nossa homenagem.
Oh, muito obrigado.
That's how everything started in September 2001.
Oh, I can add, I know you asked for some photos.
That's
but
Carmen.
they're under lockdown in the university, so I can't get them.
Então, essa foi como tudo começou. Nós nos encontramos em setembro de 2001, nesse congresso internacional. I don't know if you remember that, Mike, but you took this photograph in 2002 during the 17th World Congress of Soil Science in Thailand.
Oh, yes.
This photograph was taken by... So, essa fotografia foi feita pelo Mike quando eu apresentei um trabalho lá na Tailândia, em 2002, em agosto. I have to mention the Borassus project from 2005 to 2008, including England, Lithuania, Hungary, Belgium, South Africa, Gambia, Vietnam, China, Thailand, Brazil, and UEFS and UEMA.
Oh, you have to be a little bit careful politically because I'm okay with Inglaterra, but it should be Reino Unido because the Scottish, the Welsh, and Northern Ireland would be upset.
Ok. Ele falou que a Irlanda do Norte ficaria meio chateada. Ele deveria ter colocado Reino Unido ali, tá? So you have been there, Experimental Station, São Luís, Maranhão. Mike esteve lá, então eu com ele. Buriti, you remember that?
I do indeed, yes.
Maurício Flexuosa. This is the species we produce the geotextiles with the Buriti fibers. Produzimos os geotextos com a fibra de Buriti. This is Fernando, you remember him?
I do very much so, yes. We had the pleasure, he visited for a year in Wolverhampton, yes, it was very good.
Fernando esteve lá durante um ano em Wolverhampton, como ele disse, né? Se o Fernando está vendo, ele vai ver que ele está bem mais magro.
Fernando ia participar, problema.
Então, essa é a estação experimental da tese do Fernando, foto tirada por ele. You remember those moments, Mike?
Yeah, different places, yeah. Very good.
This was our first meeting in Wolverhampton. Essa foi a primeira reunião em Wolverhampton. I think this is still part of the first meeting, isn't it?
Oh, yes, it was, yes. That's the meeting, I remember now, yeah.
Em 2005. I think this is in Hungary.
Yeah, that's in Budapest, yeah.
And this one's South Africa, isn't it?
Yes.
Então, são reuniões que nós tivemos durante o projeto Borassus. A primeira lá em Wolverhampton. Depois eu e Carmen subimos essa escada muitas vezes em 2015. I'm saying that Carmen and I climbed up these stairs many times in 2015.
Oh, yes, yeah, of course, yeah.
Aqui é parte da primeira reunião. Aqui já é na Hungria, aqui já é na África do Sul. Rio de Janeiro, you remember that as well?
Yes, yes, yeah, that's right.
Rio de Janeiro, 2007. You can see here Pusan.
Yeah.
Joseph, several people here, muitas pessoas do projeto Borassus aqui. De 6 em 6 meses, explicando para vocês, nós tínhamos uma reunião em país e tirávamos um dia para a parte cultural. Parte cultural eu levei o pessoal no Pão de Açúcar, Copacabana, Recreio dos Bandeirantes, Barra da Tijuca, etc. That's Fernando Bezerra, 2010. That's a very nice and beautiful the University of Wolverhampton Central Library.
Yeah.
So this was in 2010 for Fernando's sandwich PhD. Then Fernando took this picture. I think they were taken in Gambia. This one as well. I'm not sure.
That's true. Yeah, it was that because that's Tina.
Tina. O Mike ganhou algum presente da Tina em Gâmbia, que era a nossa representante lá. Agora essa casa do ambiente de Gâmbia Environment House. And that's Fernando with you. Is this Colin?
Yes.
Aqui é monitorando erosão eólica em Bournemouth, no país de Gales. I'll translate that to you. About possibilities of a postdoc. That's talking to you in a restaurant in London in 2013.
Yes.
2 years before we started I started my postdoc, and Carmen her sandwich PhD. And that's Maju at 4 years old. Esse é o Mike e eu no restaurante lá em Londres, né? E a Maju e a gente conversando aqui sobre a possibilidade de um postdoc, que se concretizou depois em 2015. That's me. Mike calls me Tony 1, o Mike me chama de Tony 1, porque tem o Tony 2, que foi o Antônio Soares, my postdoc, and Maria do Carmo Jorge, PhD sandwich in 2015. That's me giving a seminar at the University of Wolverhampton, and you attend this seminar. And that's the final picture, Carmen, myself, and Maju here. That's a landslide scar in Petropolis. I think Maju was 2 years old. Maju tinha 2 anos de idade aqui. Sou eu apresentando o seminário da Universidade de Wolverhampton. And that's you, Carmen, and myself. Remember the Cradle to Cradle seminar?
Yes. Yeah.
Então, esse foi um seminário que nós assistimos lá, já no final do nosso estado, chamado Cradle to Cradle, está muito ligado à reciclagem. Well, of course, we have produced many articles and books and etc. And that's the book I wrote in 2015, Soil Erosion, Mass Movements, Geographical Approach. And you remember that you wrote the foreword.
Oh, yes, yeah.
In Portuguese is prefácio. That's Carmen.
You could also say preface, yeah.
You say preface. That's Carmen.
Yeah.
Carmen in the Wolverhampton newsletter, Geotourism Potential Strategies for Geoconservation in Brazil, estratégias e potenciais de geoturismo e geoconservação no Brasil. And that's another another article that we've written for Geography Review, Geotourism and Footpath Erosion. You mentioned footpath erosion that farmers produce a lot in China.
Yes.
But here they're not farmers, many tourists and caiçaras, the local people who live in this area. So the article was written by Carmen, myself, and Mike. That's again some photographs of the allotment. Essas são fotografias do allotment, que é agricultura em área urbana em Wolverhampton. That's Mike Fullen, me, Catherine, and one school teacher. I can't remember her name. School kids.
Yeah.
Então, o tipo de experimento é de trabalho de extensão que o Mike fazia e nos levou pós-doutorandos e doutorandos para ajudar nesse trabalho. Some practice, that's Maju when she was 5 years old, school kids, practical class 1, checking soil filtration. Então, são aulas práticas que as crianças têm com 10 anos de idade, 10, 11 anos, checando aqui infiltração. Practical class 2, checking soil pH, checando pH do solo, né? Mike Fullen, Catherine, Mohamed, myself, and Yadel. Practical class 3, a aula prática 3 aqui, ó, Mike Fullen here, School Kids, pesquisando minhocas aqui. Olha a cara de pavor da Maju aqui. I think Maju was a bit frightened with the earthworms here.
Well, that was part of the idea to show children that earthworms are our friends. They're fantastic soil engineers.
É parte da ideia para mostrar as minhocas para as crianças, né?
In fact, our local hero, Charles Darwin, his last publication, the year before he died, or his last book, was on the importance of earthworms. He spent 40 years observing the effects of earthworms on his house.
O Charles Darwin já estava... How old was he, Mike, when he started that?
He was about 80 when he died, so he must have been in his mid-30s.
Quando ele tinha o Darwin, que é a casa dele, o local dele, tem uma estátua próxima lá de Wolverhampton, também pesquisava essas minhocas aí quando ele estava pelo meio dos 30 anos de idade, mais ou menos. E aqui, Practical Class 4, Planting, and that's Pumpkins, então a aula prática 4, as crianças já estavam começando a plantar, no caso aqui, abóboras, né? And that's... Happy birthday, this was the 22nd.
Oh, yeah, you're right, yeah.
And Carmen's chocolate cake became international. O bolo de chocolate da Carmen se tornou internacional. That was a birthday party, a surprise birthday party to you.
Yeah, I didn't know it was coming at all.
O Mike não sabia nada, então foi uma festa surpresa ali para ele, num dia que nós fomos ao Allotment, que era uma terça-feira, que era 22 de junho. It was a Tuesday, 22nd of June, 2015. So
Wow.
this was, and the kids, of course, loved the cake, chocolate cake.
Oh, it's delicious, yeah.
Tava delicioso. Aqui já em Bournemouth, que o Mike mostrou, né, no país de Gales, né, casas feitas de pedra. This is Mohamed, PhD student from Egypt, aluno do Egito.
Yeah, he's finished. He's gone back to Tantra in Egypt. He got his PhD 2016, I think.
Yodel from Sudan, isn't it? Yodel?
Adola's Nigeria. He got his PhD, I think, about 2017.
Lynn é professora da Universidade de Wolverhampton. Mike e eu.
Yeah.
That's monitoring sand dunes migration, monitorando migração das dunas. Again, Lynn, Mike, Yadel, Carmen and Maju. Maju is always with us. Maju está sempre com a gente. Estou acabando, minha gente.
Yeah, she's traveled a lot. Yeah.
That's in 2016, I think, when we visited Iron Bridge. A ponte de ferro, minha gente, a ponte de ferro mais antiga do mundo. It's the oldest iron bridge in the world, isn't it, Mike?
Yeah, it was finished. It was built in 1778.
Foi construída em 1778, não é? E nós visitamos com o Mike, aqui novamente, sobre essa ponte de ferro, que é na época da Revolução Industrial. Aqui, Maju, Carmen and Mike eating the fantastic fish and chips, known all over the world. This was his idea, fish and chips. Não vou traduzir, porque todo mundo sabe o que é fish and chips. And that's an old picture of the Iron Bridge. Uma foto.
Well done. Yeah, yeah.
Carmen discovers everything over the internet, Mike.
Oh, well, yeah, that's oh, yes, that's when he went to the Black Country.
Carmen and I and Maju again, when we visited the Black Country Global Geopark. It was a project at that time, ainda era projeto, e hoje em dia já faz parte da rede. Today is part of the International Geopark Network.
Yeah, the only got its status about 3 weeks ago, I think.
Passou a ser um geoparque da rede internacional de geoparque 3 semanas atrás. Nós visitamos em 2018, um pouco antes do simpósio que a Simone organizou lá no Crato, e não era ainda, né? That's Mike, that's me, Carmen, Maju and Gordon Graham. Gordon Graham.
Oh, Graham Wharton. Yes, he's the leader there. Yes.
E esse é um mamute aqui, mammoth in English.
Yeah.
Photograph.
A real mammoth was found near here. That's a model of it, but there was a mammoth found in a glacial deposit, only about 10 kilometers west of here.
Tem 10 quilômetros a oeste de onde ele está, foram encontrados mamutes. Again, 2017, that's when Mike came here for, I don't know, 8th, 9th, or 10th time to Rio.
Sadly, I don't think that many times, but I'm working on it.
That's the first workshop of art and science. Mike came for the first, that's Rugenda's painting, famous German painter, organized by me, Professor Rafael Davi from the architecture faculty, and from Professor Carlos Terra from the School of Arts, da Escola de Belas Artes. And that's why when I was presenting with the award called Antônio Teixeira Guerra Award, that was my kind of homage to my father, who was also a geographer, giving to you this. You didn't know too, it was a surprise.
Yeah, I had no idea. Yeah, no.
You're saying thanking for the award you got in 2017. It was national at that time, and those are people who attended this and helped us a lot. People from Loja Solos, Rafael, still a PhD student, Celina, now a doctor, Luana Rangel, now a doctor too, myself, Professor Mike Fullen, I can't remember his name, from your team museum, Hugo Alves, doctor too, Yolanda, Leonardo, doctor, Aline, a doctor too, and Rafael Davi, a doctor, and our friend and collaborator and one of the leaders of Lajesolos family. Dos líderes da família Lajesolos.
Batatas grandes.
Eles chamam de big potatoes, batatas grandes, do Rafael. That's when we visit this museum, Live Museum de São João, que é em Caxias, né? Aqui Armando, Yolanda, eu, Luana, Mike e Hugo, né? Nós visitamos então o museu no primeiro workshop. Pena, it's a shame, Mike, to see how is the state of this beautiful building. Uma pena o estado da construção aqui.
It's all colonial style, isn't it?
There is no much support from the local authorities. That's the team who visited the museum. That's in 2017. Diego está aqui. That's in Ubatuba. This photograph reminds me of a Superman, super-homem. Remind me that you're going to fly over this sea, the beautiful sea here of Ubatuba.
Yeah, fantastic.
That's in Paraty. Mike, myself, and Maju, Colonial City, cidade colonial, Rio de Janeiro.
Beautiful, yeah.
You remember you visit Promata. Promata is an NGO.
Oh, yes. Yeah, very good work. Yeah.
You came up on the news here, professor of the University of Wolverhampton, visiting Promata, Sertão da Quina, which is the district. Saiu nesse jornal local aqui. Carmen Maju, always present. Mike here, me too. Another ciao and see you soon. Mais ciao e até breve. That's in 2017. And we went to a nice restaurant near our house and had a nice.
Oh, that's right. Yes, I remember.
2 hours before you travel back to UK.
It was the day I went back, before going to the airport.
Poucas horas antes de voltar, e o Mike tomou 2 canecas dessa aqui de cerveja. I'm saying you had 2 of these of beer, Mike, few hours before traveling.
That's right. Yes.
That's 2018. Museum of Geodiversity. Mike was very impressed. Museu da Geodiversidade.
Oh, yes.
That's visited here. That's the second workshop, now international workshop. Mike came to Rio again. I must say that this museum is a lot of work from Professor Ismar de Carvalho, a paleontologist. Tem que agradecer o professor Ismar de Carvalho, geólogo e paleontólogo, é um dos criadores com sua equipe desse museu. And Mike met Professor Ismar de Carvalho too. You see a very big team here. This at the end, the final day of the workshop. I will mention only a few people. Mike, my sister Maria Luz, she's a chemist. Here Fabrice, now a PhD student. Hugo, a doctor. Rafael, Manuel, he was the head of the postgraduate geography department. Our lovely lady and Professor Cassia Turci. She's the deacon of the Center of Natural Science and Mathematics. Diego, Antônio Soares, who is Tony too. Eu, Augusto, professora Cristiane, Edileuza, professor Xavier, foi meu orientador de mestrado.
Jorge Xavier.
Acho que é o Léo. Many people in the last day of our workshop. And now, 2018, 22, o Mike chama de 21 e 22. 21 porque ele conheceu a mim primeiro, Antônio José, e 22 porque ele conheceu depois. I'm explaining 21 and 22 because you met me before. And Antônio Soares 22 because you met him a few years later. Again, the very nice and very good Central Library of the University of Wolverhampton. And then last year, this was in 2018, but Antônio Soares made his postdoc in 2019. And that's Mike, Carmen, me, and Maria Julia. And you can see our very nice faces because you had just had a very nice meal in a restaurant near where we live. Nossa cara de felicidade, tínhamos acabado de ter uma refeição muito legal no restaurante próximo aqui de casa. Another ciao and see you soon. Okay. That's 22 in the allotment in Wolverhampton. You can see by those heavy clothes how nice is the weather in Wolverhampton all year long, Mike, by the heavy clothes here.
Yes, a little bit cooler than Rio.
Ele está rindo, eu tô falando, pelas roupas aqui dá para perceber como é que o tempo é agradável lá em Wolverhampton quase que o ano inteiro. Some publications too, I'll go very briefly through them. Algumas publicações. That's in this conference. Mike wasn't there, but it was the second Congress of International Gully Erosion and Climatic Changes, Urban Gullies. But Mike was one of the authors of this paper.
That's right, yes, yeah.
Then the Geomorphology of Angra dos Reis and Paraty Municipalities, Southern Rio de Janeiro State. Eu, Fernando, Carmen e Mike came out in this revista GeoNorte. Saiu nessa revista em 2013. 2015, Antônio Soares, eu, Helena Polivanov, da Geologia, Mike Fullen again, Natural Hazards, another paper. This was 2 papers were published in international journals with Mohamed. He was a very good friend of ours and his supervisors, grande amigo nosso lá. Eu e Carmen novamente, Mapping of Heavy Metal Contamination in Alluvial Soils of Middle Nile Delta of Egypt. Outro artigo escrito por nós, né, também faz parte da vida acadêmica, nossa produção científica.
Actually, while you're saying that, recently had some information, I think it was via ResearchGate, that the medics in Egypt are using those papers to inform them about cancer, because they found some association between cadmium concentrations on the Nile Delta and I think it was pancreatic cancer. So it's being used.
Yeah, I read one of these papers, Mike.
Oh, yes, I'm just saying it has been picked up and used by medics.
Ele está dizendo, Mike, que esses trabalhos que a gente participou junto com o Mohamed estão sendo utilizados agora em pesquisa de câncer no Egito, né, sobre câncer no pâncreas, por causa dos metais pesados aí no solo. Então, que importância trabalhos de solos, geomorfologia pode ter na pesquisa médica também. Another paper, he was your MSc student from Nigeria.
And did very well, yeah.
You and his supervisor. Estou chegando ao fim, a gente é getting to an end. This paper was written during my postdoc and Carmen's sandwich PhD, which came out in Pedosphere, a Chinese journal, international journal, Slow Process, Mass Movement, Soil Erosion, Review. Again, myself, Mike, Carmen, Fernando is always with us, Fernando Bezerra, and Mohamed again, our Egyptian friend.
That paper's been cited a lot. I can't remember the figure, but I keep seeing the figures.
Over 50 times so far, Mike.
Well, I think more than that. I think a lot more than that.
Mike falou que esse artigo já foi
We'll check.
50 vezes, ele acha mais do que isso. Um artigo que saiu em 2017. Congratulations to all of us, Mike.
Indeed, yes.
Aqui, this is a book chapter. Myself, Mike, Fernando, and Carmen again. Gully Erosion, Land Degradation in Brazil, a case study from São Luís, Municipality, Maranhão State. Outro capítulo escrito por nós. Now, Luana Rangel, who had her revive last year. Was it last year? No, it was 2018. A Luana defendeu a tese dela em 2018. But 2 papers that we have written together, Luana, Carmen, eu e Mike. Again, that's geoheritage for those who work on geotourism, geoconservation, and geodiversity. It's one of the most important journals in the world. Geotourism and soil quality on trails within conservation units in Southeast Brazil. And this one on soil systems, soil erosion, land degradation on the trail systems in mountainous areas, 2 case studies from Southeastern Brazil. Came out last year, both of them. Now I'm really getting to an end, estou mesmo chegando ao fim. That's when we met 5 months ago in Portugal. Carmen and I decided to visit Braga. We were invited by our friends, José Brilha from Universidade do Minho, and Antônio from University of Guimarães. And that's us, Mike, myself, Maju, and Carmen. And that's us visiting the Geoparque Arouca. Somos nós, visitamos o Geoparque do Arouca. That's a huge trilobite, Mike.
It's the world's biggest, isn't it? I think.
Mike está falando que é o maior trilobita do mundo. That's size, walking, that's Brilha, Mike and me. walking on the park. We were very well received by José Brilha. I gave a conference. Yeah. Mike helped me during this conference at the University of Minho. That's again. Até breve. See you soon.
Oh, that's in the
many thanks for sharing
World Heritage Site.
Your competence, your generosity with all of us.
Well, thank you for everything. I had no idea about this. It's
I said Jémison didn't know anything. It was a surprise for all of you.
Is Mike doing a surprise for you?
Ele está perguntando. He's asking if it was a surprise for you, Mike.
Oh yes, I didn't know.
Ele não sabia, não.
It's a very pleasant surprise. Thank you very much. Muito obrigado.
No thanks. Guerra, vamos agora dar início às perguntas. Algumas questões que estão no chat aí, e vamos começar. More question for the Professor Mike e Professor Guerra.
Mike, now some questions. I will translate them to you, okay?
Okay. I've got the chat box open.
Para ele, Jémison?
Não, tranquilo.
Mike, there is a question from Cristiano Cardoso from Ceará State. That's a question. If he has information, what China has been doing to improve soil conservation?
They are very active. It's mainly done at the provincial level.
Mais no nível provincial.
And they have quite a number of research stations across China.
Eles têm muitas estações de pesquisa na China.
Of course, in many ways, there's similarities to Brazil because it's such a big country with so many climates.
Ele está falando que tem muitas similaridades com o Brasil porque é um país muito grande com climas muito diferentes.
The research is very good and they develop the technology, but of course there is the pressure on land. So actually implementing a lot of the policies is very difficult because, for instance, if you take Yunnan province, which is the one I know best, 95% of the land is mountainous, which only leaves 5% of flat land, and most of that is in fact occupied by urban areas. So they have the urban ceiling problem. And in fact, Kunming city, the capital of Yunnan province, now can't actually get any bigger. You can get higher, but it can't get any bigger because it's filled the whole valley. So, as is common across the world, the policy is there, the understanding is there, but there's difficulty in the implementation.
Ele está dizendo que a China, né, tem muitos pesquisadores sérios, muitas pesquisas boas. O problema é implementar essas pesquisas, porque tem muita pressão sobre a terra. E tem um local que ele colocou ali, estou esquecendo o nome agora, em que 95% das terras são montanhosas e os 5% que sobraram estão ocupados com área urbana. Não pode se expandir mais, só está crescendo isso aí. Então, eles têm problemas sérios pela pressão muito grande sobre a terra, mesmo com pesquisa de excelente qualidade sendo produzida na China.
Segunda questão, Jordânia.
There is a question. I don't know. Probably you haven't heard of it. It's about research work from Marcia Hanzi in Tucano, Bahia State. She's been reverting, improving desertification through an holistic management, intuitive and regenerative of soil. She asks if you have heard of that, Mike.
What, the specific project or the idea?
Specific project.
I don't think I have. Sadly, no. But it seems a good sort of like permaculture approach, integrated approach, is making a lot of progress. So I think that sounds very good.
Falou que parece bem interessante como permacultura, né? Culturas mais holísticas, né? Fazem bastante progresso, né? Apesar dele não conhecer, mas ele apoia esse tipo de manejo holístico, né?
Jordânia, a próxima.
Another question: how to integrate agronomic knowledge, agronomic and geographical knowledge in favor of the regeneration of soils, especially in these arid environments? How to integrate agronomic and geographic knowledge?
Well, I think it goes back to the idea of the importance of education as the golden egg.
Ele vai lá atrás na importância da educação.
I know there has been an issue that people like Antonio and me are very happy in research stations writing papers, doing experiments, and then not really talking to farmers enough. And then in many ways, not us, but other places developing technologies which the local people, the local farmers won't use. Because for whatever reason they don't like it. So I think the answer lies in dialogue. There was a tendency in the past for governments to be a bit dictatorial, and the perception that farmers were kind of enemy of the environment. I think we have to recognize that for farmers to succeed in what they want to do, and of course they want to keep the soil resource, they do have to gain an income. So we need to cooperate, work together to find techniques by which they can get an income to maintain themselves and their families, but also that income be sustainable. It might be possible to have massive agriculture and have a big crop one year, but over-exploit the land and then it fails the next year. So we need to have good advisory services, good cooperation, and partnership between all players in the system.
Yeah.
So I think it's cooperation is the answer.
Eu não estou exagerando, não. O cara é um gênio mesmo. O que ele falou foi o seguinte: o que adianta você ter uma colheita massiva no ano e não ter nada no ano seguinte? Então, ele falou, vai lá, volta bastante tempo na educação, na integração entre o conhecimento, que ele falou assim, muitos pesquisadores, ele falou, não é o meu caso nem do Guerra, estão muito felizes com as suas estações experimentais, escrevem seus papers e pronto, mas não devolvem nada para os fazendeiros. Alguns governos veem os fazendeiros como inimigos e os fazendeiros nós deveríamos trabalhar em conjunto com os fazendeiros, né? E os fazendeiros precisam ganhar dinheiro, mas precisam ganhar dinheiro de uma forma sustentável. E a gente pode trabalhar em conjunto com eles e voltou a falar que a base é a educação.
Okay.
I would suggest a way forward might be to have a look at the work of Ali, Australia Landcare International. They have a very good website. So if you just Google Ali.
Ele está falando para vocês irem no site do Landcare na Austrália, que eles têm muita experiência de trabalhar em conjunto com as comunidades.
So I think they bring a lot together, and that's useful source of information. And of course, Ali in Australia is dealing often with arid lands as well. And they are taking this holistic, integrated approach, education.
Essa da ajuística, integrativa. De integração, desculpem.
Ok. Aí pode colocar...
You know this guy, Mike?
Sorry?
Can you read the question?
Yeah.
You know this guy, Hugo?
Hugo.
Hugo answers... Hugo asks the easy question, yeah?
Ele fez uma pergunta fácil que ele está dizendo.
Well, I would go back to say that out of the mud, something beautiful comes. It's a mess. It's terrible. But I think, I'm just reading in general and the news and so on, that people are now realizing a few things. One, we need to look after our planet. There's a lot more concern, I think, about the planet, and a lot more recognition that environmental problems, don't know political boundaries. Because this is spread around the world, different countries. Even China's been quite nationalistic about it, but it goes beyond countries. So it's terrible, and sadly a lot of people have lost their lives. So it is mud. Really serious, deep mud.
Da lama você consegue coisas bonitas, né? Pode tirar coisas bonitas, né? E essa pandemia, né, está mostrando como a questão ambiental é muito importante, né? Como a gente tem que olhar melhor o nosso planeta, né? E que não respeita limites de fronteiras, no caso, né? E ele falou que a China tem sido muito nacionalista também em relação a isso. Espero que tenha respondido, Hugo.
Ótimo. Próxima, Jordânia.
There's a very good, it's not about the environment, but a very good little video. I'll send it to both you and Hugo, saying these things. So I think out of this horrible mud, there'll be more appreciation of the world, the environment, how precarious it is, how we need to cooperate, and we need to cooperate.
Ele falou que vai mandar justamente livros para mim, para o Hugo, eu mando para você.
On a global
você espalha
basis.
sobre isso, porque da lama você coisas bonitas, né? Another question now in English. You see that Brazilian people are polyglot. You see, Mike?
Very good. Yes. Sadly, in England, we're not very good at other languages. It's
Ok.
importance of water erosion, tropical semi-arid regions. It's first question. It is very important. Of course, a lot of people thought that in the dry climates that it's the wind is important, and it is, but the wind was dominant. I think now, in terms of geomorphology, it's generally accepted that the semi-arid regions are the ones most vulnerable to water erosion, because they're so vulnerable in the sense of the lack of vegetation, the water stress on the vegetation. So though the rains may be in many cases quite small in amount, they're often very intense and localized, falling on bare soils or soils which are very poorly covered by vegetation. So it is very important, I think. And if you look at the major sort of gully systems in deserts, there's huge gully systems, the wadis, the barrancos go by different names. So I think it's important. How to study water erosion. Yeah, sorry, yes.
Traduzir, porque ele falou assim, é muito importante do ponto de vista geomorfológico, nas áreas tropicais semiáridas. As pessoas antigamente achavam que não tinha tanta importância porque tem pouca chuva, mas essa pouca chuva é muito concentrada e tem pouca vegetação. Então formam-se grandes sistemas de vossoroca nessas áreas, porque a chuva é muito concentrada e pouca cobertura vegetal. Carry on, please, Mike.
Best techniques, methodologies to study this environment. It is difficult. One place where I did visit. In fact, was when I went to Israel. We went to the far south of the Sinai Desert, and they had this fantastic instrumentation waiting for the 1 in 100-year storm. And it's all fantastic, very expensive equipment, all set up waiting for a desert rainstorm. And I think they waited 15 years. So it's very difficult. If you can study it in the field during an event, that's excellent, because very few studies have done this. I've seen heavy monsoon rains in the Gobi Desert in Mongolia some years ago. Now, it was really impressive how the whole system activated so quickly, largely due to the lack of vegetation, I think, and the presence of the surface desert crust. So if you can study it in the field with due regard to safety, I would do so. But the chances of having an instrumented monitoring are not good, given the that the storms aren't very frequent, and they do tend to be localized. So a lot of studies are trying to investigate sort of long-term dynamics where it integrates the signals. For instance, a lot have used radioactive cesium from nuclear fallout, cesium-137 especially. That's been used to monitor sediment dynamics in basins. The cesium signal's fading now, the half-life's 30 years. So the last big explosions in the atmosphere were 1963. So it's not a lot left. But I think there's more focus now on cosmic radiation, some of the beryllium isotopes. telling people a lot. I've come across stuff in Australia who tend to do very well at these things, using fallout isotopes, beryllium-10, I think it was, to monitor sediment dynamics in arid environments. So I would look into longer-term techniques, I think, but try to get field investigations if possible, because they are so rare to make observations in storms. I'm not actually. Does Brazil have a weather radar network?
Ele está perguntando se o Brasil tem uma estação com radar funcionando. Saberia dizer, Jémison?
Com radar meteorológico?
Sim.
Sim, da universidade eu não conheço, mas aqui em Salvador, por exemplo, acho que todas as capitais têm radares. Agora a gente não tem acesso aos dados, por exemplo.
James is saying that every capital has those radars, but it's difficult for us to have access to the data, Mike.
Or you can't just have open access.
Não tem o open access que ele está falando.
Por conta os aeroportos, geralmente, todos têm que ter um radar meteorológico, mas esses dados...
Airports, they have meteorological radars.
Well, what I'm suggesting is that it's not so hit and miss as it used to be. If you've got access to the weather radar, these intense thunderstorms that develop, you can get some idea of their dynamics and perhaps go to a place where it's probable or likely to have an intense thunderstorm, these convectional storms, in advance. But you need to have access to the weather radar.
Você falou que a gente tem que ter acesso o tempo, né? O radar meteorológico. Mas vou tentar traduzir, minha gente, foi coisa dessa que ele falou sobre as técnicas que acho que foi Nascimento que perguntou, né? Nascimento? Não lembro exatamente. Hein?
Inocêncio.
Hein? Inocêncio, desculpe. Para área, desculpe, Inocêncio Oliveira. Para áreas semiáridas, Israel tem equipamentos que pode ter que esperar 130 anos para poder usar aqueles equipamentos modernos, que pode ser que só ocorra um grande evento chuvoso em 130 anos. E por isso que ele disse que se tiver esses dados dos radares meteorológicos, pode ser mais fáceis. Então, por isso que ele disse que se você tiver observação de longo termo, talvez você consiga trabalhar melhor com esses dados. Não é uma coisa muito fácil.
A próxima é Jordânia. Eu não consegui botar aqui, pedir a Hugo para colocar.
That's a question by Jémison. You can read it, Mike.
Yeah, on desertification in karst regions. I haven't looked at that specifically, but I know there's lots of work in what was Yugoslavia. Because that's actually the original term karst is from Yugoslavia. I think it's in the Croatia now, which is a heavily karst area, which is semi-arid. And as I understand it, it's a big problem because, of course, karst is a big sink of water. So what water does fall in dry areas, subject to desertification, will just go simply underground very quickly. So I think even in a humid climate, karst areas are dry because the soils are very thin and go into the bedrock very quickly and easily. And of course, it dissolves the bedrock and enters underground. So I haven't looked at specifically, but I think it would be a big challenge. I think, therefore, desertification problems will be especially difficult in karst areas because of the surface water retention issues.
I will translate, Mike. Está dizendo que não é uma questão fácil, até para áreas úmidas, porque a área de karst ela infiltra água com muita facilidade, né? Então, como estudar a desertificação nessas áreas em que a água cai, ela se infiltra rapidamente por causa do relevo do karst, né? Então, não é uma tarefa muito fácil, não.
Ok. Thank you, Mike.
It's my pleasure. Chinada.
Oh, Manuel, you know this man, Mike.
Oh, he's from the very dangerous city of Petropolis. You have to be careful.
Na cidade perigosa de Petrópolis.
Because when he was with us last year, Manuel kept saying how dangerous Petropolis is for landslides. So, oi, Manuel, yeah.
Questions for you, Mike.
Yeah, I think it's very important, the knowing about traditional agriculture, because, of course, there is a local indigenous wisdom which has perhaps in some ways been forgotten. So if we go back perhaps 30, 40 years, there was a very technocentric approach that science could solve everything, and we needn't worry too much about the views of local farmers. But now there's a recognition that the wisdom is quite deep, even though they may not be familiar with the scientific terminology. So I think it's very important. I can give a good example, I think. We had in here and across much of Northern Europe, removal of hedgerows, especially in the 1960s, and this integrated fields. And the argument was economic, having larger, more efficient fields, which enable larger agricultural machinery. But now going back, and at the time, people were saying, "Oh, that's ridiculous, putting all these complex hedges all over the place." The farmers just being silly, old-fashioned. But now it's been recognised that, in fact, quite often these complex field shapes are very good for soil conservation and actually follow different soil types. And so what worked as a good management practice on one soil type didn't work so well on another. But now the whole field was being subjected to one management regime, which has to some extent been addressed by precision agriculture. But I think over the past, say, 30 years, increased recognition of the inherent indigenous wisdom of local people, which of course is not in a university course, but has been accumulated over many centuries in many cases. A thing which I found fascinating was working on the Yuanyang terraces, because of course that's going back 1300 years, we believe, though it hasn't been properly recorded, because they didn't have a written language. They had a language, but it wasn't written. But somebody wrote down the local songs, we call them ballads, or like poems, which had the wisdom which one generation would give to the next. And some of these have very deep insight. I can have a look. I've put some of it in the, well, I've put a lot of it in the newsletter European Society for Soil Conservation. But I've got a file on it, and I can send it.
Oh yeah,
but just as an example of, it's not the only example, but it's one that comes to mind of the inherent sort of wisdom of indigenous and traditional agriculture. So I think it's very important.
Try to translate, Mike. Vou tentar traduzir porque ele falou bastante coisa, quer dizer, mas resumindo, ele falou que, assim, pela pergunta do Manuel, obrigado, Manuel, por você estar aí com a gente hoje, respeitar o conhecimento, a sabedoria, né, wisdom, a sabedoria indígena, local, né, das comunidades, né, locais, porque eles sabiam como praticar a agricultura, né, e ele deu o exemplo europeu. Só 30, 40 anos atrás, eles começaram a acabar com as cercas das pequenas propriedades e fazerem grandes propriedades, com essa grandes para o padrão europeu. E aí, com isso, começou a ter mais erosão, porque aquelas cercas funcionavam como barreiras para o transporte de sedimentos. E aí, consequentemente, começou a ter mais erosão ali. Então, a sabedoria que os pequenos proprietários tinham 30, 40 anos atrás não foi respeitada, transformaram-se em médias ou grandes propriedades e passou a ter bastante erosão a partir disso. Então, respeitar os conhecimentos locais, o conhecimento indígena, que ele está falando que não precisa ser necessariamente de índios, né? No sentido de habitantes locais, né? Indígenas, como eles falam, né?
Ok, Jordânia, próxima.
Oh, yes, I've seen from Beatrix, yeah? Yeah, very important. There's, in fact, Jean Person's worked a lot on roots, which Antonio would have come across.
Yeah.
And there have been, until fairly recently, ignored a bit because, of course, we can see vegetation above the ground, but we can't really see it below the ground. It's been kind of ignored. And so there's much more focus on it. And I'd say the leading person on this, who Antonio knows, is Jean Person, who's at the University of Leuven, Catholic University of Leuven in Belgium. And yes, root structure is very important. The best summation I think I've heard is that you can consider them to be environmental nails, that they're kind of hammering the soil down, keep it in place. On the other hand, there's the weight of the tree can actually promote instability as well. So it's a bit of a balance, but generally it's considered the root systems are very important. But the link between roots and landslides hasn't been perfectly understood because it doesn't automatically follow that if you clear woodland off a slope, that there's landslides straight away. There may be a considerable length of time before there is a landslide. And it's suggested one of the reasons for this is that it takes a while for the roots to decompose. So you cut away the trees, but the root systems are still in place and offer some stabilization. And in fact, without the weight of the trees, that effect will be quite strong for a while. But once those root systems decompose, which of course in the humid tropics would be quite rapid, the system becomes unstable. So I think, yes, it's not an immediate link, but once an area is deforested, I think within about a year it is very susceptible. Steep slopes are very susceptible to landslides. But I suggest to Beatrix to follow up on the papers, recent papers from the group from Leuven, by Jean Person.
Ele está sugerindo ler os artigos mais recentes do Jean Person, da Universidade Católica de Leuven, que vem trabalhando com isso há bastante tempo. A resposta dele foi muito longa, né? Mas ele falou justamente as raízes podem funcionar como unhas, né? Que estariam segurando as árvores ali. Agora, com a decomposição delas, né? Ou o próprio desmatamento, né? Certamente você vai ter o risco de deslizamentos muito maior. Mas, assim, não é algo, assim, totalmente consolidado, tem muita pesquisa sobre isso ainda, e ele sugeriu que a Beatriz e outras pessoas interessadas nisso leiam um pouco os trabalhos de Jean Person, da Universidade Católica de Leuven, na Bélgica, que vem trabalhando com isso há bastante tempo.
Ok. Thanks, Mike. Guerra, agora a gente tem uma surpresa para você. Primeiro eu quero agradecer aí a presença de todos, Manuel, Sirius, Jonas, Cleiton, Lindenberg, Cristiano, tem muita gente aí, a professora Tainá, minha colega Mamed, pessoal do GEOLANDS. A primeira surpresa, Guerra, é que Michael agora faz parte oficialmente, assim como você, desde muito tempo, do GEOLANDS, como parceiro, membro estrangeiro do grupo de pesquisa. Então, agradecer a Mike por aceitar esse convite, né, de trabalhar com a gente aqui no Brasil. Então, thanks, Mike, for accepting our invitation to work with us at
It's my pleasure. Pleasure's mine. Thank you. Obrigado. Muito obrigado.
A segunda surpresa, entra Hugo agora aí e entra Jordânia.
Hugo, Dr. Hugo. Oi, Dr. Hugo. Oi, oi.
GEOLANDS now.
Oi, professor Mike.
Oi, Hugo.
Oi a todos. Bem, I'll be quick here. I have a surprise a tribute.
Another surprise, wow.
Yeah, another surprise. A tribute for 21. Tributo em homenagem ao Guerra.
Oh, fantastic.
Some few photos and 2 videos and my words.
Oh, fantastico.
So
I didn't know anything about this, 21.
I didn't know too, Mike. Também não sabia. São 2 vídeos?
É bem curto, Guerra. Não são grandes, não.
Yeah. So, let me... Here.
Isso é uma homenagem nossa aí pela sua contribuição com os geotrópicos e os geolandes e com a gente desde sempre.
Many thanks. Muito obrigado, meu amigo. Muito obrigado.
A tribute for the contribution of 21. Bom, então, aqui
obrigado,
essa foto inicial, né? Uma belíssima foto que o Rafael Carvalho mandou para mim.
Mike, can you see the logo?
Nessa apresentação.
Yeah, I can see the picture. Are you in your lab? Oh, yes, in Wolverhampton, lab coat, yes.
University of Wolverhampton.
Aqui a palestra de abertura de um evento de 12 anos do Geotrópicos, lá da Estadual de Feira de Santana, do professor Jémison, que o Guerra teve lá.
Guerra, você pode comentar, fica à vontade aí. Tranquilo.
Congelou?
Opa. Tá vendo, Guerra?
12 anos atrás? Não, 2 anos.
Não. Foi em 2018.
I was there in 2018, Mike, and I gave a lecture there. You can see me on the photo. Eu dei uma palestra lá.
Here.
Yeah.
That's Maju. That's Maju on Google monitoring. She was 1 year and 3 months, Mike, old.
Oh, yeah.
Mike was there, visited there.
Oh, yes, we went to your field site, yes. In
a heavy rain.
Yeah. Oh, yes, it was a wet day.
Chuva danada. De novo aqui,
That's
a gente trabalho de campo.
Muito obrigado.
A Estela aqui, eu, Guerra e a Maju. Isso. Aqui, curso da Rosângela de morfologia dos solos. Luana.
Carmen. Luana. In our laboratory of geomorphology.
E aqui uma comemoração depois do encerramento do curso com a professora Rosângela Botelho. Rafael aqui, o Léo, o professor Leonardo.
Um abraço aí da galera, Léo, Rafael, né? Luana, que eu nunca mais vi essa galera.
You met Rosângela during the first and second art and science.
That's right, yes, I did. Yeah.
She gave to us a short course on soils.
Carmen aí, né? Um abração para Carmen também.
Oh, yes, the cake. I remember that. Yeah, it was fantastic.
2017?
Mike,
yeah, the
chocolate cake, Mike.
The famous chocolate cake, yeah. Fantastico.
Olha essa foto, Hugo. Tem que botar a data. Essa aí, de quando essa foto? 2017, Mike. It was during the first...
the first workshop, yeah. Here, Carmen sent me some photos.
Yeah, from Bournemouth.
Carmen is good to keep secrets.
She didn't say anything.
Yeah, just say the reason why looking unhappy is we used to go to Bournemouth every year for a field trip. And Lynn there in the middle holding that post. One year she had a minibus and she drove straight into the post, and I never understood why. So every year when we go, we always go and pay respect to the post. So we're being respectful to the post, and she gets very embarrassed by how bad her driving was. Usually her driving is good, but this time...
Can I translate?
Yes, yeah.
Can I translate?
Yes, but we're saying we're paying respect to the post. But it's just sound a bit odd.
Um ano que a Lynn dirigiu o minibus e ela bateu nesse poste ali que ela está segurando. Então, todo ano que eles vão lá, eles tiram uma foto ali em respeito ao poste que ela bateu. Até hoje ele não sabe por que ela bateu lá, porque ela dirige bem.
Here The first book organized by Tony Wan with Professor Sandra Cunha and his mother.
Oh, beautiful. Yeah.
Boa, Sandra.
Mike, I have a word. Mike. Eu tenho que ter uma palavrinha com ela depois dessa live aqui.
Another book.
That's the book which was launched during a conference, and Hugo has written a chapter on this book.
Oh, yes, you told me.
This model is by Jémison.
Yes.
Okay.
2013.
Another book one?
Oh my God. Carmen didn't say anything, Hugo.
I kind of, it's only a semi-joke, really, that Tony Wan produces a book before breakfast each day.
Ele falou que antes do café da manhã todo dia.
Que bom.
There was in Sinagel of Crato, and Professor Simone was there. Professor Simone was there, Guerra. Sometime.
Ela que organizou.
Yeah.
My God!
A presentation. A presentation in UK.
Guerra, mesmo aí, velho. Caramba, very different, Guerra, Mike.
Essa foto faz 30 anos. Olha como é que era feito o painel naquela época. Oh.
A book signed.
This was my first book, Mike, Geomorphology, in 1994.
1994.
Was this before or after breakfast?
Before breakfast.
Before breakfast. Oh, good.
Sinagel of Crato again.
Oh, Lagessolos family, Mike.
Eu perdi.
Leonardo, Armando, Maju, Tony Wan, Carmen, Aline, Rafael, Rosângela.
Eu perdi esse tal da greve dos caminhoneiros, lembra, Guerra?
Sim. Muitas boas recordações. Mas eu vou ter uma palavrinha com a Carmen depois, Hugo.
My master presentation? How can I say?
Yeah, I understand. Yeah. Tony 1 and Tony 2. Yeah.
Tony 2, Monica,
Monica, yeah.
You met her before.
My thesis presentation with Tony 2, Manuel, Tony 1, Fernando, and Aloysio. And so four of you went to Wolverhampton. So a little of Mike is here.
You'll be the next, Hugo. Você vai ser o próximo.
Yes, definitely.
Yes. The master presentation of Rafael with Aloysio, Andrea Velar, Helena Polivanov. Now the thesis presentation of Luana Rangel, with Carmen, Kátia.
Kátia Mansur, Antônio, André Velar.
Leonardo thesis presentation.
After his driver.
With Rafael Davi, Tony Chu, Andrea Velar.
Rafael Davi is always present with us.
Here the Fabrizio master presentation.
You remember Fabrizio? He took you to that field trip, Mike, during the second conference.
Fabrizio. He did. Yes, very good.
Now he's a PhD student.
Yeah.
Yes. Oh, very good.
And the field trips.
Muito boa essa, Guerra. Muito boa.
Oh, that's me when I was 6 or 7 years old with my father.
Oh, in the field, very good.
Meu pai ali para ele, de boina, Hugo.
Caramba.
Aponta meu pai ali, Hugo.
Here.
That's my father.
Surveying the soil.
He was a geographer. And he used to take me to field trips with students, university students.
Very good. That's how you know.
That's me when I was, I think, 7 or 8 years old.
monitoring.
Oh my God.
UK monitoring.
Monitoring water moisture.
Oh, this was on
At the
the South
experimental
Downs.
station, Mike.
This was in Sussex, yeah?
Rogate.
Near Brighton somewhere.
Southern England.
Yeah.
Now, Rio Claro.
I think it's West Sussex.
West Sussex, yeah.
Caramba, Hugo. Onde é que você pegou essas fotos?
Now, Rio Claro in a gully. Entering in a gully. The same gully.
Wow.
Esse sou eu de costas?
Yeah. Here. That's Professor Pedro from Dourados and 21. And trail field trip. Study area of Luana in Paraty.
Onde é que é isso?
Paraty.
Ah, in Paraty. You have been in Paraty before, Mike?
Yes, beautiful place. Yeah.
That's
Yeah, very famous. Yeah.
Luana,
that's a World Heritage Site as well. Yeah.
Luana, Luísio, 21, Rafael, eu e o professor Pedro. Again, in Paraty too.
So like, yeah.
Looks like the Marvel.
And our parties. And our parties. Our conference.
Food again.
Yeah, associate all these with food. Yeah, that was here. Yeah.
Oh, this was last Christmas, 2019. Oh no!
I think that's 17 or 18. I don't know.
You have this mug, Mike. 2018. I took one of these mugs to you, to Caprine, to John Penn.
Oh yes,
Mike tem essa xícara, essa caneca.
Yeah.
Here it's the
This
last
is 2019. Last Christmas, I took one of these hats to you, Mike.
Yes, I got that. Thank you. Yes. And I was going to say the coffee mug. He gave one to Keith, the associate dean, and he uses it every day, or at least he did before the lockdown. Yeah.
Ah, eu dei um decano também que usa todos os dias que ele está falando. This is our anniversary part, 25 years old of Laje Solos.
Oh, well, yeah, congratulations. Yeah, that's good.
And congrats to 21 for all his trajectory.
Absolutely. Fantastic. Fantastical.
Now I have two short videos.
Oh, video as well. Wow.
Let me
Finish.
Let me share again.
Guerra, então, enquanto isso, é para agradecer a você aí essa parceria de, sei lá, desde a época do mestrado até o doutorado em que você teve em minha banca, e o Hugo também vai falar algumas palavras para a gente aqui do laboratório. Você sempre foi um parceiro, antes do laboratório, quando eu era estudante. Então, a gente tem muito carinho por você, torce que você tenha bastante saúde, você vive 100 anos, e agradecer a Carmen pela gentileza e o Hugo de se debruçar para fazer esse PowerPoint, e agradecer a Mike e a todos aí a presença, porque a gente sabe de sua história, de sua contribuição, e eu acho que é bom fazer a homenagem quando as pessoas estão presentes. Essa homenagem póstuma, para mim, não é que não seja importante, mas se a gente tem a oportunidade de abraçar agora, é importante que a gente faça isso. Então, em nome do Geotrópicos, do GEOLANDS, do grupo, e do Laje Solos, que é a mesma família, a gente quer agradecer a você o carinho, a atenção, e que a gente siga aí trabalhando com todos vocês. Mike, Hugo, Luana, a galera que eu conheço, Leonardo. Então, um grande abraço e receba esse carinho da gente aí.
Vou tentar passar o vídeo aqui, vamos ver.
Jémison is thanking us, Mike, for our friendship with him. Now I'm going to show a video.
Excellent.
Que vídeo que é esse, Hugo? Estou curioso.
Eu também, isso é surpresa de Hugo.
Estela com um filho?
Compartilhar o som, Hugo.
Espera aí. Tá sem o som?
Ela falou alguma coisa?
Tá sem o som. Hugo, quando você abre lá embaixo na janela, tem um lugar que é compartilhar som. Quando você vai compartilhar, tem um lugar que você tem que marcar.
No
programa.
No StreamYard?
No StreamYard. Você tem que, para poder liberar esse som do vídeo.
Deve ser aqui, deixa eu ver aqui, áudio.
Aí você marca, tem um lugarzinho que você marca e ele libera o som.
Disable Audio Processing, será?
Olha, bota aí para ver.
Vamos ver.
Se eu tentar abrir aqui o meu StreamYard para ver onde é. Não saiu.
Muito obrigada.
Agora.
Então,
saiu.
Aumenta o som.
Aumenta o som.
Estou aumentando, peraí. Agora play.
Ficou baixo, vá traduzindo, Hugo.
Põe o som mais alto possível, Hugo.
Já está.
Ela
já...
Hugo,
Deixa eu fazer o seguinte, deixa eu ver se... Vou botar aqui no celular. Mas, enquanto eu vou botando, eu vou falando, né, para adiantar. Guerra, agradecer também a você por tudo, né, pelo apoio de sempre e pela confiança, acima de tudo, né, pelas cobranças nos momentos certos e, sobretudo, pela confiança. E dizer aí que agradecer que agora, né, acho que a gente passou aí de um orientador e orientando para parceiros. Então, agradecer a você sempre esse apoio que você dá. Principalmente agora, né, comprando as ideias. Né? Muito obrigado por todo o aprendizado nesses quase 12 anos de Laje Solos.
Pode soltar, Hugo.
Vou soltar aqui, peraí.
He's going to show, Mike, a short video of one of my undergraduate MSc and PhD students, Stella, her name.
Oh,
she was my undergraduate, and then she was my MSc, and then she was my PhD student.
Ó, deixa eu...
Ouviu agora, Hugo? Deu para ouvir.
Agora, né?
Tudo bem? Bom, estou aqui para agradecer tudo que eu aprendi com você. Quer dizer, muito obrigada.
Ela está mostrando o vídeo.
Desde que eu entrei no Laje Solos em 2004, eu aprendi muita coisa. Eu cresci muito enquanto profissional, enquanto João.
Conseguiu ouvir?
Conseguiu, Hugo.
Conseguiu, Guerra?
Consegui. Obrigado,
Okay.
Stella. Não sei se a Stella está nos vendo aí. Grande parceira, grande amiga também de muitos anos, né? Atualmente professora do Pedro II, né? Aconteceu uma situação muito triste com ela recentemente, né? Perdeu o pai e a gente sempre deu todo apoio e continua dando. Se você tiver aí, Stella, um abraço meu, da Carmen, da Maju e do Kainan para você. Sei da dificuldade que é.
E para finalizar...
One of my ex-PhD students.
Eu já vim aqui agradecer você por todo o seu incentivo, todo o seu apoio durante a minha tentativa do processo seletivo do doutorado, conversas, orientações. Agradecer também a confiança de aceitar alguém de fora da FRJ. Quero também agradecer a você pela confiança novamente de me chamar você igual o último capítulo seu. Agradecer por tudo e pelo convite a fazer parte da família Laje Solos, que de fato é uma família, somos todos muito unidos, é uma troca de experiência, de saberes, de conhecimento muito rica. Agradecer também atualmente por terem aceitado o convite ao projeto 4 do Laje Solos. E no mais é isso, agradecer a pessoa que você é.
Obrigado, irmão.
Extremamente generoso.
Isso aí,
Yes,
Hugo.
I met him during the first and second workshop, international workshop, Mike.
Então,
Very good. Yeah, very good.
Pois não,
Então,
Jémison?
É isso, então a gente vai vamos encerrar agora essa live, agradecer a presença de todos. Professor Mike, it's a joy to meet you, even if online. Thank you very much.
It's my pleasure.
Não tenho como agradecer, você sempre parceiro, topa tudo, está sempre com a gente, a tradução, a colaboração, a amizade. Hugo, amigo desde sempre, então agradecer a presença de todos, dizer que tem quarta-feira, tem lives lá com o Laje Solos e os outros colegas do GENAT, do GEAFES, participem. Thank you very much, Mike. See you, bye bye.
My pleasure.
Posso falar uma frase para o Mike? Posso falar uma última frase para o Mike? Can I say a last sentence to you? Not a last sentence, because I plan to meet you many times. I will say this sentence to you, copying Barack Obama. When he met Lula, he said, "He's the man." And you are the man for us, Mike.
Oh, you're too kind.
You're the man.
There's just one problem. There's one problem.
Problema.
It's only about 4 months to World Soils Day. Mm-hmm. So you have to save up money to buy everybody a beer on World Soils Day.
I will do that. 2 beers.
Hey?
2 beers.
Jordânia, apareça aí, Jordânia.
Fantástico.
Isso aí.
Jordânia.
Um abraço a todos, Jordânia. Obrigado, Jordânia. Mike, Jordânia is the student who's organizing our lives. Very special people.
Oh, nice to meet you. Oi.
Foi um prazer, professor. Obrigada pela sua contribuição. Professor Guerra também, a Hugo.
Obrigado,
so finish again with Mike. He's the man.
$1 million. Guerra, $1 million, Mike. Change.
Oh yeah, 78. I'll check with the account in Switzerland. Yeah.
Ele vai na conta dele no Suíça, o dinheiro foi depositado lá.
Jordânia, pode encerrar.
Ok.
Okay, it's nice. It's been a great pleasure talking to you all. I look forward to talking to you soon.
Obrigado a todos que acompanharam essa live muito especial, né? Aos professores também. O professor Mike, ele disponibilizou o slide, então vou deixar no link, vou deixar na descrição do vídeo o e-mail, caso alguém queira, é só solicitar que eu envio também. Vou enviar os certificados e até a próxima. Obrigada a todos.
Tchau.
Tchau.
Obrigado.
Surpresa.
Guerra.
Parabéns, Jémison. Parabéns, Jordânia. Parabéns, vocês do GEOLANDS. Obrigado pelo convite.
Tchau. 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 Tchau.